Committee meeting. Our board president is not here tonight. He is out of town. And we have a few other members who are not here, but could we start off with a roll call, please?
Ms. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. McBride? President Ewing? Mr. Riddle?
Present.
Ms. Callahan-Wozniak?
Here.
Ms. Leguizamo? Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes, here.
Okay, we do have a quorum present. So let's proceed to our item 3 on the agenda, which is the approval of the meeting minutes of January 17th, 2023.
Okay, if,
Could I- Go ahead.
Can you have Mr. White pull up the minutes, please?
Mr. White, can you?
I want to make sure I'm doing the right ones.
Yeah, I think you were here, Ms. Han. I think there was, it was
Yeah.
Ms. Leguizamo and myself that were not at that meeting.
Right, and so if you could pull them up,
Here,
Mr. White?
I've got them right here if you want to take a quick look
Let me
at them.
see, is this the one?
Yeah, I've got the meeting minutes. I'm just showing them to Ms. Hannah right now.
Okay,
You want to just,
No, this isn't the, yes, it is. Yeah, it is. I got some corrections
okay,
on this, this one.
okay,
Under 6B,
okay.
well, do we have a first and a second?
We don't have a motion yet to approve the minutes.
Yeah.
So let's have, can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the January 17th,
So moved.
2023 Operational Services
Second.
Committee meeting? So I have a motion by Ms. Callahan-Wozniak and a second by Ms. Gonzalez.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Any questions?
any questions?
Yes. I've got some corrections on the minutes under 6B.
Okay, and can you tell us what those are?
Wait a minute, you're kind of going kind of fast here. Go back down to, stop under where Mr. Harris was speaking.
Oh, that's not 6B.
It's not
It's
6B?
not 6, that's reports.
Okay, could you go to the reports, please?
I think it's lower.
6B was the.
Yeah, keep going. Yeah,
Slowly.
yeah, okay.
It's 4B. I think if you want Mr. Harris's stuff.
Yeah, stop. You can stop right there.
The first paragraph.
Yeah, the first paragraph. Okay, there needs to be some corrections in there. Where it says that that Rick Harris, Morgan HR explained that the study normally takes 30 weeks to complete. However, his team was asked to finish in 6. And actually, that needs to be changed to normally it takes 7 weeks to complete the process, and it actually took 7 months. That needs to be changed in the minutes. Also, where it says that that there's some more things that needs to be changed, but Pro Tem President,
Yes.
if you don't mind, I could give those corrections to the secretary.
That would be fine, I think. Yes.
Okay, because there's some, and I don't want to, I want the minutes, oh, my fault. I want the minutes changed before, well, I don't know, with the conditions that the changes will be added.
Are there extensive changes? Maybe we should get a look at them, and maybe we should postpone this until next meeting.
Yeah, why don't you
Let's
do
do
that?
that.
I'd
You wanna
feel
withdraw
I
better.
your
withdraw
motion?
my motion.
You want to withdraw your motion?
I withdraw my second.
Okay.
Thank you, and
Okay,
we
so
could
we'll
do it.
postpone this
Okay.
carry it over until our next meeting.
Yeah, because
Then
they
we-
have to be accurate
Right,
before we approve them.
okay. Okay, we'll move on then to
Now,
next-
wait a minute, was there,
just one
Did-
one set of minutes.
okay, was there, okay, in that in there was also a correction, sir. that they had Mr. Edwards' name as Raymond Edwards.
Okay,
And it needs to be changed to Rayon Edwards.
okay. And we can put that in, if you give all of those changes to the secretary, we can get those up and approve it at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you,
right.
Ms. Hannah.
Mhm.
Okay, we're moving on then to item 3A, which is the Brookside Nature Preserve concept.
4A.
Mr. Moten, this is for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Riddle. Good evening, board members, superintendent, staff, and community visitors. We do have a brief presentation for you this evening. The agenda item is the Brookside Nature Preserve concept. And just to inform the board before I call a representative from the Park District up, the Park District just recently approved their 5-year master plan. The district did have a seat. I sat on that representing the district as they worked through that about 18 to 24 months ago, but Mr. Tim Grimshad, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce that, he led that committee. He works for the Waukegan Park District. He's here this evening to discuss something that was presented to the Park Board last Tuesday on February 14th. He's bringing it to the district to see if the district may be interested in making some modifications to the forest preserve by Brookside campus.
Okay.
Well, thank you, LeBaron, and also thank you, board, for allowing me to speak today. It's been a long history that the school district and the park district has had in terms of cooperative work that we've done together. And we're all here to serve the community, and I think we find unique and creative ways of doing that. One of the neat things about going through a master planning process, and LeBaron was a big part of this, so we can go ahead and advance to the next slide here, is that we developed a master plan committee. I do have handouts, by the way, of all of this if anyone needs that in hard copy.
Can I get one?
Okay,
great.
Yeah, me too.
Why don't I do this? I've got some maps, and I also have the whole presentation as well. So why don't we do this? I'll have little Baron hand those out to the board, and then there's individual ones at the time.
okay. I saw that.
And so one of the neat things when you go through a master planning process is, one, you realize who your core partners are. And we had 5 core partners that we called into our master plan committee. The school district was one of those key 5. And LeBaron was an excellent representative along the way. As we held both group and individual meetings, one of the ideas that kind of flushed out of that is we have this unique piece of land that's next to the Brookside campus, kind of sandwiched between the Brookside campus athletic fields and the soccer field. The park district owns a portion of it, and the school district owns a portion of it. Right now, it's simply fenced off and isn't really being used at all by the
Like that
public.
one.
And the entire facility does remain secure as well because it has a soccer complex as part of that, a soccer field as part of that, which is a preference it sounds like the school district would like to maintain. But when we look at the woods, we look at it for also potential recreation use as well. And if you know anything about natural areas at all, one of the things that used to be a regular part of our community were oak savannas and woodlands. These beautiful areas with majestic oak trees, beautiful flowers and trees and shrubs within those woods. Over time, they degrade, though. And as they degrade, they become generally more clogged. They tend to fill up with a lot of non-native trees and brush. And once you can open those back up, you can restore those woodlands to really high quality. So when you look at this concept, is that not only do we have a great section of woods that could be a cool place for a walk, but we also have a significant natural area that could be used for ecological studies as well. And that could be by the students at the Brookside campus and other school groups in the area as well. Not promising that'll happen or necessarily even planning for that to happen, but it's a strong potential for sure. So as we went through the master planning process, and you can go ahead and advance to the next slide, the input that we have, obviously you can't see this on the screen well, but you can see it in your presentation. It really just highlights some of the input that the school district gave. And one of those big pieces of input is that there seemed to be a shared interest between the park district and the school district to make better use of this piece of property. Once again, it's about a 4-acre parcel and 2 acres apiece. So you can go advance to the next slide. And you can give one more, because that just is just the recommendations that ended up in our plan, which is to develop a natural areas plan, a trail plan, implement it, and work with the school district on it, and potentially, and underscore potentially, add a playground sometime in the future. That would be a whole separate planning process. But when you look at the district and where playgrounds are available, there's not a close playground to this for this neighborhood. And we heard from several of the residents of this neighborhood through our master planning process, and we've identified it ourselves that it's one of those areas that's short of a playground. And eventually, it seems like a good potential for one of those playgrounds to go in. So we can go ahead and advance to the next slide. This kind of gives you an idea of in town where it's located. Once again, it's just to the west of the Brookside campus. And if you look in this area, you don't see a whole lot of other natural areas in terms of places for people to go to enjoy a little slice of nature and a little bit of that respite that can often provide. So if we zoom in now on the big picture plan that you have in front of you, we can go to the next slide. This is what we came up with after our discussions, something that I put together. LeBaron has reviewed this. It seems to make reasonable sense. Underscore that it's really just a concept at this point. But the idea is, as I mentioned, if you look at the map closely, there's fencing that currently exists on both the north and the east sides of the property, and then all the way around the south end, that encloses the area and keeps it secure.
Tell me,
Yes.
excuse me,
You bet.
okay, on this picture,
Yeah.
where is Brookside and
Brookside's on the
Macquarie and, because it's not captured on this,
There it is. Look on your screen, you'll see it.
Exactly. Yeah. If you look at
okay, on that, I'm talking about this.
if you're holding the map upright, Brookside would be at the top of the map.
Mm-hmm,
Correct. Yeah. And
Okay.
then the main campus would be just to the right
okay,
on the map.
mm-hmm,
So does that help?
Right, this is soccer field, yeah.
mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So the ideas that kind of came out once again is that that fencing could come down, which will allow us to open the property up. That would probably only come down once we're ready for public use. Though one of the initial steps would be to go into the woodlands and do the restoration work that we want to do. It does involve brush clearing. Sometimes people say, well, why are you cutting down trees? Because they're weed trees. And just like a garden, natural areas get weedy as well. You need to clear those out. We would, after the clearing work happens, we would also introduce seed and some plugs to augment what's there and start to restore that area. So it starts looking more like a Hingston Park or a Bowen Park than it does a clogged woods. And through that work, we'd probably identify some sort of conceptual loop trail, which would probably be similar to what's here. Want to make the most use of the property we have, get as much walking distance as we can. Start off as a simple walking path that would be wood chipped. Oftentimes wood chip paths move around a little bit with time because we realize, oh, this area ended up being a little wetter than we thought, so we might move it over here. Very flexible in that sense. If it's not being used a lot, we'll probably just leave wood chips. If it gets a lot of use, we might upgrade to gravel and go with a nice limestone screening path or something like that, so that it could be used more regularly and fairly easy to maintain. In the upper right-hand corner is where I identified where a potential playground would probably make the most sense. And that would be the same corner that we would establish a small amount of fencing to define the entrance to the preserve, kind of the formal entrance, and that's where the wood chip path would come out close to the road. So that would allow quick access for the neighborhood to the north. And then there's a couple other small access points, one on the east and one on the south that would also allow others to enter the woods in that way as well. Now, if you take this fencing down, that means that your soccer field is no longer secure. So the school district portion of this most likely would be to install fencing, which would be the yellow line on the left-hand side of your map that would join with other fencing in place to re-secure the soccer field and add an access gate on that lower section of the yellow line there. So that you would have the same use of the soccer field, it would still be secure, the woods would be opened up, it would be managed by the park district in terms of doing the day-to-day trail maintenance and woods management. The school district would continue to maintain the soccer complex. The area to the south of the woods, a little section between the south of the woods and the road below that, is kind of open right now. It could stay turf. Maybe we plant a little bit of prairie there along the edge potentially, but that would be kind of to be decided in the future. But that's where people can walk up to get to the soccer complex then. So it seems to make sense. It's a relatively low-cost option. You can see the costs on the map itself that are identified there. And those are just ballpark estimates right now. Once again, we're just introducing the concept. It would be relatively small contributions by the school district and the park district to make the project happen. So in a nutshell, that's a presentation. LeBaron, if I missed anything, please feel free to add, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Ms. Wozniak?
Where do you anticipate people parking to get access to this? I'm sorry, where do you anticipate people parking to get access to this?
We really see this more as a neighborhood park than a community
Okay.
park. So we wouldn't see a lot of people coming in from other neighborhoods to come just for the park, I would guess. So, and if there were, they would just utilize street parking. But it's a good question. We'd probably analyze that a little more
Well,
closely.
there's
once-
not a lot of parking there because I know
Right.
from baseball
Yeah.
games that,
It's only on one side
Yeah.
parking.
Okay, yeah, on one side of the street parking there?
Mhm.
Okay. mhm,
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but good question. We can definitely,
So ultimately, I'm still trying to picture in my mind where all of this is.
mm-hmm.
It's across the baseball field. Let me say this: the baseball field is here.
Mm-hmm.
This is the box line right here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's that area that's all fenced in, Miss Hannah. If you've ever driven around that area, there's a big fence going around with big
Right.
woods. And I always wondered what it was about. Who owned it?
What isn't it being used now as
No.
soccer?
No, it's a woods.
Part
It's
of
just
it.
a,
This
it's
is
just
the
a
soccer
woods.
The
field right
parcel.
here.
Okay.
That's the soccer field. The woods are here. And the baseball diamond's here, softball diamond's
So we
here.
have property over there in the woods.
Half of it is ours, and half of it is the park
Exactly.
districts. And
Yeah.
it's the, as Mr. Grimshaw said, it's the last of some oak woods in that area.
Yeah, it's a real scarcity for sure.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely. And it's just whether you may not care anything about ecological values in the community, but it's a beautiful place for a nice
Absolutely, I
walk.
do.
And by the way, we also did consult with the police department on their views on whether or not security would be better or worse if we did this project. And they feel that strongly that it would be better. Once you remove a barrier for good people to get in, the bad guys are going to get in either way. And the good people can get in if you remove the barriers to that. But more importantly, once you open the woods up, you have better sight lines into the woods. They say the biggest concern they have there is you can't see beyond 10, 15 feet into those woods right now. So if we open them up, you got much better sight lines. You have an access path to get in. You have easy ways of getting in and out. So they feel strongly that it would actually be a safer setup if we do open up the woods and allow people to use it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I had
Gonzalez,
a
go ahead.
comment, and maybe Victor, you can chime in, because I think that parcel of land next to the woods is where JROTC does the Bulldog Olympics. I'm not sure if I'm remembering correctly, but I would love like students to have input, because if people are walking around in the forest preserve, I think it's great. I think we should do it. I would support the project. But to see how it would interact with students who have to do the mile, or on the baseball field, or like students on the other side if they're doing an activity with the instructors, because I don't know if the Raiders use that field at all either.
To make comment of that real quick.
Yeah, is it working?
Is it on?
Now it's on. Go
Now it's on. There we go. To make comment on the Raiders and the Bulldog Olympics. Honestly, for Raiders, that would work perfectly. This preserve walkway, honestly, because the Raiders are really people that like doing exercise, doing physical fitness, and I feel like this park reserve idea walkway around the perimeter, honestly, would work really well with them, especially during the spring, summer, and like late-ish fall. Honestly, they would love that idea. Honestly, on top of my head, honestly, student-wise, I see them as really loving this, especially as a place after school to hang out. Honestly, being able to walk around, get that blood pumping, honestly, during the spring, summer, and like early fall. And to the Bulldog Olympics, honestly, it really won't affect much of that, honestly, because the parcel that we use is the one that's right next to it. Like going on, which street is it? It's like going down left
The
of Brookside down.
Metropolitan.
So there's this like little baseball field, like empty field right next to it, the forest preserve, not the baseball field that we use for Brookside, but the one on right next to it. That field right there is used, but obviously it's not really being used by the park district, as you said. But it really won't affect JROTC much. Honestly, it may honestly benefit it in more ways than one. But from the student perspective, honestly, this is a really good idea, honestly, in my opinion.
Right.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Otherwise, I think we've got a great project here and a
Okay.
chance to partner with our park district and, like you said, open up some space for the public that live in that area to enjoy those woods, as small as they are, still to take a walk through the woods, and it sounds great.
Wonderful. I'll leave a couple of my business cards up front here, so if anybody's interested and has more questions about it, feel free to contact me.
Thank
Do you have any idea when this project might start? When you might start clearing that land, and then maybe when the path would be there?
We would probably start as early as this summer. We do have some money allocated in our capital improvement budget that could go towards that natural area restoration. In terms of opening it up, if like we had all green lights and the school district was good with it and it had a more formal vote, especially when monies were expended, then we would probably actually do the access improvements probably in 2024 then, would
Okay.
be the earliest it would happen.
At the earliest. Thank you.
Exactly, yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Thank
You're
you for
welcome.
bringing
Thank
that
you.
to us.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimshad. And just so the board is aware, as he mentioned, if any funds are expended on this with this collaborative partnership, that would need to be brought back forward. Also, if the board is supportive of this, it sounds there's general support for this, the district would want to take some additional steps to look at potential liability insurance, how that would impact liability for the district since part of it is district property, and what some supportive recommendations may be there if there's a general consensus to move forward with continued investigation to work in conjunction with the district's budget process for next year, as well as the park district's process for their budget approvals, as well as their construction to renovate the space.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Moulton, for partnering with the Park District on this, too.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and I guess we're at item 4B now, request for increase in ESSER 3 investment allocation for capital improvements.
Yes, sir. For this next agenda item, I'm going to ask Ms. Polk to come up as she's diligently worked on the ESSER 3 allocation for COVID relief for the school district. There is a request under discussion on the agenda items to increase that allocation by $10 million to support capital improvements. Ms. Polk?
Good evening, Ms. Polk.
Vice President of the Board, Board Members, Superintendent, colleagues, community. Yes, this is a recommendation of the Superintendent and Administration to increase the allocation that's currently in the ESSER 3 application from the approximately $8.6 million so that we can consider other expenses such as other capital improvement as HVAC or other projects that are eligible in ESSER 3. We want to make sure that we maximize use of those funds and put the right expenses in the right place. So that's basically why we're requesting this. When we met with the Capital Improvement Development Committee, there are some life safety issues that must be addressed, such as the roof at Brookside campus, which is approximately $10 million, and that's one of the examples that we put in the item as an example of what we could spend this money on. And I think, Mr. Riddle, you were a part of that meeting.
Yes, I was, right. And I certainly support what you were trying to do there, because a roof is something, that particular item, I think, is on the committee, as you know, has been pushed back and pushed back each year when we've met, because it's such an expensive repair to replace that roof. And our operations department has been leery of what could happen in the very near future if that roof starts leaking. It's been patched many, many times, and it can't be done. I know we asked if they could do it piecemeal, and they said not really. It's a large roof that needs to be replaced in the Brookside campus. Yes, Ms. Hannah.
I just want, Mr. Moulton, can you tell me when was the last time that roof was replaced at Brookside?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Hannah. I will need to confirm, but we know it's been more than 30 years. When the district did have a roofing assessment done when we acquired solar panels around 6 years ago, that roof had exceeded its life of 30 years at that point. But I can get a specific year
I
that it
need
was
a
last
specific
replaced.
Point, let me tell you why. Because there was an antenna that was put on top of that building. And at that time, the roof was totally fine at that time. So could you please get the information about the last complete roof that was put on that building? Also, when that antenna was put on the building at Brookside.
We can definitely confirm that year, Ms. Hannah. For the purposes of this discussion, I do want to clarify that we are not talking about the whole roof here. We have more recently replaced the roof within the last 5 to 6 years above the Trap Auditorium, but this would be for the central part of the building as well as the west end of the building.
10 million?
Yes, ma'am.
$10 million
Yes, ma'am.
for a roof?
Yes, ma'am.
I think y'all need to go out for bids. And I certainly hope it goes out for bids. $10 million?
Yes, ma'am. That is the information we've gotten from our roofing consultant. Previously, there was an approval to actually design the roof replacement. The district did not proceed at the time because of some of the funding concerns that Mr. Riddle mentioned. So we do have a full design to put this out to bid. The $10 million price point is based on the escalation in the roofing consultant's prices from when they created the bid package and the final design
that's a
a few
lot.
years ago.
That's a lot. And before anything is approved, we need to see specific numbers, okay? Because my other issue is that we're nibbling away at this money. I understand that the term maximizing the ESSER money, okay? But there's so many things in our district that our students can benefit from. We need teachers educated on how to teach reading, ESSER money. We need real social emotional programs and projects going that we could expend this ESSER money on, because that was the original intent of the ESSER 3 money for student learning loss and social emotional learning. I understand that there's tricks and turns, okay, in there that says we may be able to utilize money on buildings, okay, where students are. That's fine. But the majority of this money that we got from the government needs to be given directly in our classrooms and where things need to be fixed for our children. And we're playing shell games with the money all over the place. And there is nothing, I'm waiting to see something that is directly being given to the students. And I understand the school improvement plans that the principals and everything, that's a drop of the bucket of these millions that we received. And so I'm wavering, okay, about this until somebody can assure me, at least. Hopefully the whole board has the same concern. But what are we spending on the children? What are we doing for the children with this money?
So, completely understandable, and thank you for the comments, Ms. Hannah. Ms. Polk is going to reference some of the spending plan for ESSER, but I wanted to mention something in response to something you said earlier. We have not awarded any contracts for any roofing replacement. We haven't issued it for bid, but we do have bid specifications, so we certainly bring that back to the Board of Education when that process happens.
I'm not looking for fluff.
Ms. Hannah, we appreciate your comments, but we're conscious of the time limitations that we have with this money. If we were to look back at our financial statements in terms of the budgets, we've increased the budget significantly over the last few years to address some of the very things that you're mentioning. So the source of funds is a concern of yours, but some of those things are addressed with local funding. Because of the time constraints, I truly, strongly recommend that we put capital improvement, which we otherwise would probably have to use local monies for because they're life safety issues and concerns. And so whether we use the ESSER money or whether we use the local money is obviously at the discretion of the superintendent and the board, but for planning purposes and to ensure that we hit the benchmarks for spending by that September 24th, I truly would be comfortable if we put eligible expenses such as HVAC, asbestos abatement, and anything that's in the building that directly impacts the students. How the local funding goes is a part of the budget process, and the board still has a decision around where to direct those funds. So if Mr. Chin is up here to give you a kind of summary of where we've put most of the money, and obviously, you know, based upon the approval that you all previously granted us, the majority of the expenditures that we have thus far is not for capital.
Well, if you're saying we put $25,847,404 into academics, where's the results?
In the grant application, those are the allocations that were submitted. And that money is posted on the website as to where we allocated it. And so you see up here, and I'll let Mr. Chin get up and explain it, but you'll see that there are some monies that we have to spend in those particular areas. The after-school, learning loss, and summer enrichment. We have to allocate those amounts for those specific purposes. And then the other monies, we could spread it across other things that's eligible for ESSER 3. And that's why we're coming back to you, because we have some monies allocated as it is, because when we submitted the grant, they're allocated for things. But we can revise, Mr. Chin can revise that basic application to cover things that we think that we need. So, Mr. Chin, you want to talk about where we spend money in general?
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Vice President, members of the board, superintendent, community, and staff. So the question of what, Ms. Hannah, if I'm understanding you correctly, what academic purposes the money has been used for?
Well, not only academic.
Just
And out of $50 million, we put $1 million, a little over $1 million, into summer school enrichment.
yeah,
And then after school, $1 million. Learning loss. As big of a school district that we have, we could only scratch out $5 million out of 50.
No, there was 8 million at the top, too.
It doesn't matter. It's still a drop in the bucket of $50 million.
okay, I think I understand where you're coming from. So when you see on the chart where it says state education agency after school, and there's the approximately $1 million, and then below that it says state learning loss at a little over $5 million, and then state summer enrichment at $1 million. Those are required set-aside amounts that come to us from the state. That doesn't act as a maximum of what can be spent towards those areas. Rather, those are the minimums that are prescribed to us within the grant application from the state. And so I think I understand.
So
Your
we're
concern.
only putting the minimum in there.
No.
Let me ask, 'cause I
That's
think-
the required amount.
I think in the grant, what we're proposing is that additional money goes towards capital. But that's not reducing the allocation overall that the budget would give to academics. It would come from another source, and that would be local. So that's what we're proposing. And we're only proposing this because of time constraints to ensure that we spend this money by September of 2024. We are definitely not proposing that you would reduce anything that would go towards academics.
No, I understand
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
understand that. I still don't agree with it, but I understand.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Pope,
Yes.
so you're thinking outside the box. I see where Ms. Hannah's coming from. So there wasn't no idealistic idea as opposed from an academic standpoint where we could have found things that's needed, where we could have spent more than what was allocated. I think
Right.
that's what she's coming from.
Absolutely.
And
I
know
can tell
that's
you
not-
that
that's
there's
not your-
more spent because,
Let me finish.
Yeah.
I know that's not your department.
Yeah.
The individuals that's dealing in that department, they could have come up with all kind of areas of use for that money for academics
right.
where they seen learning loss if they have wanted to. It could have been more than
Field
just what
trips.
was seen up on the chart here.
All
That's
kinds
that's
of
where Ms.
stuff.
Hannah's coming from, I believe. I mean, that's
Answers.
what I see when I hear this presentation, that there could have been money allocated a little bit more than what has been already budgeted for it if somebody would have come up with the need for the use from an academic standpoint.
100% of the grant is allocated. Only 8.6 million right now is allocated towards capital. The rest of the grant is academic. But we're looking at it and we're saying, okay, some of it is not due to anyone's fault. You can't find the people, a lot of the factors, right? And so we're saying we're bumping against time. We need to make sure that we spend the money by September of 2024. That doesn't erase the local monies that are available for you to allocate towards academic endeavors. You still have that. The recommendations will still come to the board during the budget process. But we're just simply asking that we would take this source right here, and put it in something that we otherwise probably will have to do anyway. And that is the roof, or something like the roof, because I don't like to lock myself down to one thing, but something that's eligible in the ESSER grant, we would allocate the monies there. Yes, ma'am.
So we are allowed to do this.
Yes,
We're not
ma'am.
abusing any rules, and ESSER funds can be used for capital projects.
Yes, ma'am.
And, I lost my train of thought, sorry.
Yeah. HVAC, asbestos abatement, windows, stuff like that, air quality things. We can put that in the grant, and that's what we've been doing.
And if we don't,
Roofs.
I called my thought.
Yeah.
If we don't spend the money for ESSER, for all our ESSER funds by September, we have to give it back?
We haven't gotten it, it's a reimbursement, but yes, we would, but we don't even
You're
think
right,
like that.
Right, well, but if we don't use it, we lose it.
Yes,
Okay.
So, Ms.
but
Pope,
we don't even,
Ms.
No,
Yeah.
we don't want to
I
do
won't keep
that.
speaking out of
No.
turn, but just like you ran off asbestos, the roofs, what about substance abuse? What about violent prevention?
Come
I
on
could
now.
just go on and on and on where that money could. That's what I'm getting at. That's why I see where Ms. Hannah's coming from, but that's not your area. of expertise.
Our kids need motivation in order to even want to come to school.
One of the things that I do want to remind you is that this is one-time money. So regardless of whether you start these initiatives, it would really go local in subsequent years. So what we're proposing to you is the same. If it's a program or initiative that you want to be long-standing, it's local anyway, after this money goes away.
Vice President Riddle. Sorry.
Yes, Mr. Gonzalez.
I just want to make a comment because I think the way that we're thinking about this almost separates the efforts that we're trying to do with the money that we have. I think we all agree that we need more money, right? Like, we're an under-resourced school for the district of our size. And it's not, I hear your point, Mr. McBride and Ms. Hannah, like, we need programs for students. We need more people to engage with them. But that's going to happen in our schools and out of our schools. And it's not always going to be the method that we reach them. But if I had to choose between a field trip and making sure that they're not getting asbestos impacted, our students are disproportionately affected by asthma and things like that. People worry about air quality. We got some emails about our monitoring system that we should respond to, Mr. Moen. But like, I think we need to do a little bit of everything, right? And if you're saying we got to spend the money and we could use local funds for the other things that we would have spent anyway, I don't think that we're not trying to do everything with the buckets of money that we have. So I don't want that to be out there of like, oh, we're ignoring this, because we do see that. And I think that those are just partnerships that we need to strengthen. Like, people are working on those things and we need to get better about communicating those things to the students. But this is about, let's make sure that the teachers and the students in our classrooms don't worry about the roof caving in over them. And that's important, because if that impacts them, they're not going to want to learn, and they're not going to like the classroom for material reasons. It's a little bit of both, to me. That's why this makes sense. I don't know.
Mr. LeBaron, you want to share with us the conditions of the roof? Does a certain area need to be, the whole roof need to be changed, or there's a certain spots, because that is a lot of money, $10 million that Ms. Hannah
For a roof?
spoke for the roof. My thought is you could add a little bit more and build a whole school.
Yeah,
Right.
Mr. McBride, the condition of the roof it's in poor condition. It's not just the roof deck itself, it's the membrane, it's the insulation. And it's on a majority of the building, about 65 to 70% of the building. This would not include the east end, would not include the trap auditorium, but it would include the rest of the roof. We did do some investigative work to see if we could do some glorified patching, but it is too far gone, and it is impacting the structural integrity of the roof as well as the interior conditions of some of those occupied spaces within the school.
So you're completing the whole roof, not a portion of it?
The whole central and west side of the roof? Yes, sir.
It's not the whole roof, though.
60%. Mr. Moten, okay, I had to have my roof, just to give an example. So I had a roof on my house that was approximately 30 years old. So I could go another year or two, and have it patched. And that roof, I understand, has been patched a number of times. Or the fellow who looked at my roof said, you can replace it. It's at its life, it's past its life. And I hated to have that roof, I hated to put the money out to have that roof replaced. But it is, if you don't get your roof replaced, you start to get leaks. And now you have more damage. And you can't be in the house. And then, it's going to cost more to replace it. We held off on this committee for several years on this because when it came to the Capital Improvement Committee, we said this is too much money. And then it wasn't 10 million. It was 7 million or 8 million. Now it's gone up. Eventually, a roof has to be replaced. Now you're just pulling it out of one bucket, and we still have other needs in our district. We're not going to ignore learning loss. We're not going to ignore the needs of our district and our children that need things. But we can't necessarily get all those services in place. What I heard Ms. Polk say is the timeline. It's got to be, the bills have to come in by September 24th. They have to be paid, or we don't get this money. So there's some time pressure there too. we have to get that roof replaced. If we don't use this money, we're going to use local money because it will be replaced in a couple years. It cannot last another 20 years or 10 years. It's going to be replaced, or we're going to be in big trouble. So we're pulling it from a source that we know is available, and if we try our best to bring in all kinds of programs, we may not get them in place and spend the money, is what I hear, before it's gone. And then we'll still have to spend local money. We're going to meet our kids' needs. We want to meet their needs. We know these needs are going to continue not just this year, the next year, and the year after. They're going to be continuing for a while. So we're going to be using local funds. This is a method Ms. Polk and the committee has looked at and said, yes, nobody likes to spend money on a roof. I did not want to spend the money on my roof, but it had to be done. And now it's going to last another 30 years. So this roof hasn't been replaced.
I'm still waiting for further information about the history of that roof.
Well, the history of the roof is 30 plus years old.
Well,
And the roof has reached its lifetime, whether there
I,
was an
th- I
aerial
think
on
the
top
issue
or
is
not.
the money,
I want
right?
documents.
The amount,
I want to see the documents.
$10 million.
We'll get those.
Yeah, I want to see the documents.
Mr. Moulton, can you please get the information on when the roof was put on, the area, maybe your diagrams that you have that we can send to the board tomorrow? So we'll get you that, Ms. Hannah.
All right.
Vice President
And we have
Riddle.
a question out here.
Yes, Ms. Lindsay. Do you have a question?
Use the mic, people can hear you on the YouTube.
So,
Is that working?
let's try it. I
There
think
it
it's
is.
working. So, it seems like we're getting really hung up on the minutia of the roof when we've been told that that was a possibility for the $10 million, right? So, I don't think it's a good use of everyone's time to focus on the details of the roof, but of course, get your questions answered. My concern is that I keep hearing deadline, we're coming up on the deadline. Can we, the public, just be refreshed on when was the earliest date that we were able to use ESSER funding? So basically, how long have these funds been available, and why are we now focused on a 6-month deadline, essentially? And that's being gracious, it's really 7.
Yeah, that's a good question. Since we can go back with expenditures dating back to March 20th of 2021? 2020. And so we've maximized expenses that were eligible for the grant, and we've moved those into the grant, right? For tonight, you'll see that we were audited by the state, and we did well with that. $0 we had to pay back. So we capitalized on it, and that's what we're recommending tonight that we also do. We're not saying don't do this, but we're saying the best approach at utilizing these funds is to put something that we know is eligible in there and that we have to do. And in terms of why haven't we spent it, school districts across the country are having issues with spending the money because we have to really make sure that what we're putting in this grant is eligible and that it could pass an audit, not only local, not only state, but federally. And so we're our team is very strategic in what we're putting in the grant, documenting what we're putting in the grant, and that's why we're doing it this way. And we're very comfortable with it.
I think it's great that we passed the audit with more than flying colors.
Yes.
Right, 0%. I think a second part to my question is, for the funds that we are concerned about right now, how long have these funds been accessible to us? Is that back to March 2020?
Yes.
Okay, so we've had these funds to maximize for the past 3 years.
Yes, and we've done that because in the application, we've allocated it towards different initiatives. But as we know, some positions are hard to fill. We have a lot of positions that's in there. And so what if we can't fill them?
Okay.
Attempts are made to fill them, but what if we can't? So we can't live off the if, right? Because we want to make sure that we get this money. and don't have to send any of it back. And we know for these capital projects, life safety related stuff, we're gonna have to do that one way or the other.
Yeah, and I think we can all agree that Waukegan is tired of sending funds back to the state. So to maximize it would be great. It would just be nice to see this much attention and this much urgency around how we can use those funds for learning loss. I understand the building. I totally agree with you, Ms. Gonzalez. If I had a fear that the roof was going to cave in on me, I wouldn't be able to focus. So I do agree that there's a balance, but it would just be nice to see some urgency for learning loss as well.
There's another question back there, Mr. Ritter.
Yes, the same thing I'm saying. She just
Go ahead. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say that if we're going to be replacing the roof, we should be looking at local partners or local contractors or whatever. Obviously, rather than just giving the contract to whoever because we decided to go public with the amount we want to spend before we actually look for prices. But since we're going to go with those higher amounts, we should really try to get a steel roof so that way you don't have to replace it like ever. And then that other portion on the east end you can do in the future. That's just my personal opinion. I don't work for the district and I'm not a contractor, but common sense is plentiful. Have a great day, guys.
Not common practice, though.
Mr. Vice President Riddle, if I may.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yes, go ahead.
I've been hearing this conversation for the last, I think, 10 minutes, give or take. Honestly,
Yes.
I'm not sure, right? And I've heard a little bit of both sides. And with the money being spent here, which is around, if I'm correct, 8 million to 10 million on capital improvements, especially for Brookside. And from being a student at Brookside, I go to this school building for the last 2 years. I know the conditions of this building. I have seen it firsthand, day by day by day. And honestly, I do see the issue that board member Hannah is saying, honestly, with the academic loss. It's real. I have seen it myself, honestly. And it's something that we really need to push for. But I also see the capital improvements issue that member Gonzalez is also saying, that honestly, the roof is not the best it could be, honestly. There is roof that is leaking. I will make a comment right now in Agnedato Doe, quote, that when it goes to the Gerald TC hallway, when we go downstairs, that roof is always leaking. There's always a leak, and about a month ago, that leak was a massive puddle. It looked like it was literally raining. So honestly, I see the balance that we need to make, because honestly, we have this money that the state is giving us, honestly, and it's a good amount of money, honestly. 50 million is no joke. A lot of people don't have that or just wish of having that money, honestly, and we have the chance from the state to be using this money. And honestly, as Mr. Monton has said, honestly, this is stuff that needs to be done, honestly, but there's also the issue of academic loss, and I completely understand that. That is something I ran on as a student board member, to bring that academic loss and bringing it back to a standard that is acceptable when it comes to the state. But there's also the building, because students are coming to these buildings every single day. So you see the issue here where, honestly, we need these improvements, we need these capital improvements, but we also need the academic allocation. That also makes sense, obviously. So if Mr. Monton is still here, I do have one question, honestly, and, well, I guess a comment. You were there at the committee meeting that you went with all the students, honestly. You saw how the comments kept on streaming for that hour and a half, honestly, about all the capital improvement issues that we need to make, honestly. So just a personal question and things that students have been texting me the last 10 minutes about, honestly, asking, honestly, so I'm, being their voice here from Brookside. Does this capital improvement come from that 8 million that is said here, or is it just more or less from that?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Henstros. This would be in addition to the 8 million. So the 8 million was allocated for various capital improvements throughout the district. This would be in addition to that.
Okay.
So 16 million.
So give or take that amount of money, honestly, and I see it's a lot, honestly. I won't deny it. And addition to that, when it comes to capital improvements of Brookside, does it just include the roofing, or is it like other additional stuff, like piping, insulation, obviously the Hephaestus, honestly? Does it come that, or is it just specifically a roofing issue that we're seeing?
So the potential project that was expressed this evening would be solely the roofing replacement. Everything above the ceiling grid that you might see in your classroom or the hallway. And I do want to express some additional information, and I think this is a good conversation, but you know, as Ms. Polk mentioned, the September 2024, we also need to be aware, as we've mentioned in previous meetings, cost increases for supplies, goods, mainly, as well as labor. So what we've seen is up to an increase in 30% in costs for roofing materials. We've already been informed that other districts and commercial entities are making orders for these supplies and materials, commercial grade, for summer 2024. They're making these orders now. So we have the Business and Finance Office looking at the financial components of the S3 grant, what's eligible, but we're also looking at a building need, and a building need that's been around for several years, a building need that predates my time here, as well as some other administration. I will confirm, Ms. Hannah, and for the board, the date that this portion of the roof was last replaced. But again, we're talking about structural failures, we're talking about potentially impacting occupancy in its current state, and even worse if it's not addressed in a timely manner.
Mr. Mountain, can we also just see, like, I think it would help to have visuals, because we had that situation over the summer where some classrooms were in bad shape, and I don't think that we see how important it is to students until you see the pictures of how, like, you know what I mean? Not to speak badly about our facilities. They are our schools, and we should be proud of them. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I don't think until the public sees it that they'll really understand why we need to do this. So can that be a part of it, like what Ms. Hannah is asking, but also like the classrooms affected? Because the West Wings are all of our labs. Like those are all of our science classrooms, our art classrooms. And I think that needs to be a part of this conversation. Not that it's just the roof, that's just an eligible expense, but can we get some of that? Like,
With concurrence of the superintendent, we can provide some additional information. The superintendent, under her leadership in the Board of Education, the capital improvement plan, we've done a lot of capital improvements, but I would not be telling the truth if I said that we don't have a lot more we still need to do.
Right.
So this is along those same lines, and we can provide that information when we bring this back forward.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olden. Yes, go ahead, Mr.
Again, I think it's been said once already. We keep talking about the roof. I mean, the roof needs to be changed. It just needs to be changed. Like Riddle said, I had to change my roof. It cost me $6,000. But there was other things interior inside of my house I need to take care of too, just as well as the roof. Same thing with the school here. Rather than just the roof, there's things in the building that's happening that needs to be taken care of. And I think that's what Ms. Hannah is talking about. And there's a lot of things that could be done that me on the outside, not educated, I know that could be done to help our children with their academic loss. And a lot of their academic loss come from things like substance abuse, violent intervention, fighting every day, insubordination towards the teacher. Now, what are we doing to try to address that with the money? And I think that's what Ms. Hannah is really talking about. And once you do that, from an academic standpoint, you might see grades go up, you might see attendance go up, you might see, but you got to put those things in place for that to happen. So I'm not the visionary, the person that's out there supposed to be doing that, to say this is what we need to spend money on, but I got enough sense to know that that's what the money needs to be spent on, and that's why they came up with academic loss.
That's right.
One of the things I want to remind us is that over the last couple of years, we've reverted from just rolling over budgets to need-based. So if other needs are identified and not think about the source, how we're paying for it, but rather those are the greatest needs within the organization, then those things would be funded either through local, another grant if it's eligible, if it's categorical aid, or whether it's through ESSER. So I think that we need to take the label of the funding source off and talk more about what are the greatest needs within the organization, and those are the things that you want to push.
Absolutely. And just a brief rebuttal, Mr. Riddle, please.
Yes.
When we were going through the budget development process, there were many things that were requested in that budget development, but there were also many things in that budget that were rejected as well
Yes.
for through academic stuff.
Yes.
So, okay, you all talk about balance. Where's the balance of that? If things had not have been rejected in the academic realm of the budget, maybe we would be having a different conversation right now. But where all those things that were rejected during the budget process, pulled out, what you guys call it, put in the parking lot, all of those things, we have the money. Why aren't we using it for those rejected things that were in the budget?
Okay, so I could speak from a process. And it's expected that we're going to have a lot of things that are unfunded. That's expected because of the amount of money that we have. We can't do it all. But what it does, when we identify what the needs are within the organization, we're able to tell our story. We're able to say that's why we're at tier 1. We're not getting enough money in our district to be able to meet all the needs that we have. But we have strategically made a choice, both the administration through the superintendent making a recommendation to the Board of Education that these are the highest needs, right? This is stuff that I did in my other life. That's what I did. We had a funded and unfunded list. Right? And so if we get a windfall of money, right, we're not guessing. We're not guessing where we're going to spend the money. We could go right back to that list. That list never goes away.
Right.
It's still there.
And that's my point.
Yes.
Exactly.
Right.
And I don't want to belabor this, okay, because I know we need to move on.
We need to move on. We do.
But I do want to make this last comment with what you just said. And all of the things that were rejected, and I remember specifically, there were things that were rejected that were like for college and career. There were things that were rejected just on the like in the elementary schools that principals and stuff were asking for and stuff. See, so all of those things we need to be focusing on and using and spending that money before September 2024.
I'll make this comment, and then if we look at the budget that was with the district a number of years ago.
This is going to be our final comment because we do have to move on. We've got quite an agenda. So
Yes.
Go ahead.
If we look at that budget from a number of years ago, our actuals were about 250 million. Our budget for this year, I think, is about 330. Right? With the majority of those expenditures, going towards academic
staff
and staffing,
Yes,
right,
staff,
and professional development and stuff for the
Staff,
schools.
absolutely.
So, and you were a part of our budget development committee, so
Absolutely.
you saw it.
Absolutely.
So I do appreciate all of your comments. I do appreciate your comments, Ms. Hannah, and I know you understand it. But that's why we're making this recommendation, so that we can ensure, just to make sure that we maximize this money.
Right.
It's not negating the use of other sources.
Right. And I see two more hands,
Yeah,
but we
there
really
were two
do need to
more
move forward. I
hands.
wonder, Mr. Sebecki, did you have another comment that hasn't been made already? Yes, I do. Okay. Because we've kind of gone around I think, Mr. Polk, you said you realize where we're at and where the board's concern is on this. Go ahead, Mr. Sebecki.
All right, so I have a question. So we talk about all these funds, the needs that are needed, like the Brookside roofing, and I agree with that. My question is the needs and the wants of this district. But on the other hand, we talk about funds and where these funds are going, but we're making it a priority for 214 Washington Street when we haven't heard where any of those funds are coming from.
Okay.
We're pushing that bill and we're pushing the agenda with the city and everything else, and we're pushing that by real fast as a priority in the district when there's a lot more priorities in this district, like the Brookside roof. And that's my question. We don't even know where these funds are coming from for that administration building or to redo this building.
Right. But that's not on this agenda item that we're talking about right now.
But but it's the same thing. This is where all these funds could be used. It could be used in capital improvements.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing. That's considered a capital improvement. And we don't know where these funds are being spent, and that's the point of this. But we're pushing that building, but we still haven't been told where those funds are going to be even used.
Right. Okay, thank you, Mr.
And
Sabecki.
Mr.
And Mr. McIntyre, I believe, did you have a comment to add to this, please? Okay, this will be the last one because we do need to move on. And I think the administration has heard the board as to where we're at with this in the community. And go ahead, sir.
So I don't profess to be an expert in budgets or anything of that sort, but there was a few years ago where this board unanimously declared that there was a crisis that existed with African American students in the district. 1% being proficient in reading and math. They called it a crisis. You guys called it a crisis. So to me, as I listen to everyone speak about priorities, I would think that would be at the top of the food chain as a priority. And the improvement has been, I don't know, at a snail's pace, if you will. But for this board, who has shown very much through a word that I've heard quite a bit of, which is pandemic, we know how to treat a crisis. And I'm wondering if these funds are being adequately appropriated to crisis. This building sounds like you all are labeling it such, and you want to shuffle the money around to make sure that you're able to take care of it. I don't disagree that when it comes to making sure that these kids don't have water falling on their heads, that's appropriate. It applies to them having an environment where they can learn in properly. Right. But you can't discount all of the other aspects. From a priority standpoint, the students should be first. They should be first. And I don't feel that this is addressing that concern that you guys labeled as a crisis. I'm going to keep saying it because it seems to have been forgotten. Unanimously, crisis. I'm wondering, when will you guys start treating it as a crisis? Because there's a consequence when you don't. When you don't, that pushes these young people, they get discouraged, they hit to the streets, right? They get discouraged, they join gangs. They get discouraged, they pick up guns. They get discouraged, they come to school and fight, and you label them as bad kids. Where did it come from? Are they properly being treated? And it doesn't seem that way to me, so I really wish that you all would address that issue, because I haven't seen that it has been properly addressed since you guys labeled it a crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McIntyre. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on now with those two thoughts that the community has given us. Certainly, those are certainly big concerns that we have. We're on item 5. It's informational items for possible action. Do you want to just go through those? I don't know if we need to discuss them, but at least tell us what they're about.
Yeah, absolutely. So on information items A, B, and C, we have approval of facility fee waiver requests per board policy 3206.
Right.
The information is listed here for MO Athletics, Midwest Mountain Lions, and
who are they?
Women's football team.
Yep.
Yeah, football team.
A football team?
Mm-hmm.
Women's tackle football.
For
At Weisfield.
our kids?
No.
No, outside organization. All of these are outside organizations. And then
But our students are sometimes part of those programs.
sometimes
the
they are
question?
part of the
Yeah.
programs, yes. But an outside agency is requesting to utilize our facilities,
Say
either
it
on a
again,
one-time or recurring
Charlotte,
basis.
so the people can hear you.
What? It's a women's tackle football games.
But what did you say? Not too many of our students.
Our students would probably not, they're not women, and they probably would not be participating in the
But the
tackle
youth
football
soccer
game.
team.
But the
waiver?
youth soccer is one of them, and basketball is the other one. I
Yeah,
believe.
youth basketball, youth soccer, and women's football.
Okay, any other questions
And
on those
cheerleading.
three?
And the reason why they're asking for the waivers?
They are able to ask for waivers per our policy and facility use guidelines, Ms. Hannah.
But that don't mean that we have to approve them,
That is true.
okay? Because we have expenses
Yes.
in a lot, in allowing all of this stuff. Okay, and so, I mean, just because they can ask for waivers, it's like you all are recommending that we approve the waivers. And that's what we've been doing all along. Everybody that comes to us, we approve the waivers.
Yes, Ms. Hannah, we can recommend, or the vendors can recommend waiver requests. The Board of Education can approve or deny the waiver request.
Right, and I asked the question, why are they asking for the waivers? I mean, is there a financial need in their organization why they're asking for the waivers to pay the public schools for the use of their facilities?
So,
Oh.
I don't, coming up, Mr. Ochoa is here. He's managing this process currently for the district. If he's prepared to speak on this, I'll allow him to speak. Mr. Ochoa?
So for the youth programs, a lot of times our families are involved. Otherwise, if we don't do the fee waivers for those programs, then the parents have to pay out of pocket. But it's something that benefits the students.
No, I get the youth program, anything youth, I'm not talking about that, but we're waiving, fees for adult programs.
Yeah, and unless we ask specifically, I wouldn't be able to answer that.
Well, y'all shouldn't be bringing that to the board then without all the information.
So, you were correct, Ms. Hannah. If you look at the information provided in the agenda item on item A and item C, they're requesting a total usage waiver of the fees. The youth would be utilizing those programs. For item B, it is a partial facility fee waiver with the exception of personnel and equipment fees. And that item B is the Midwest Mountain Lions football team. So 2 full waivers, 1 partial waiver based on who's going to be participating in these programs.
So, Mr. Moten, am I correct that they're asking, a partial waiver, it says with the exception of the personnel and equipment fee waivers? So they're paying for the personnel, our custodial people that have to be there, and they're paying for use of our equipment, but because it looked like it totaled 8,000 something, and they're only asking for rental fees assessed at 3,600. So they're just asking for 3,600. This is the football, ladies football.
Yes, sir, and their itemized invoice is included in the packet that's attached.
Yes. So it's not a total waiver, Ms. Hannah, just a partial waiver. And then board needs to decide. This is going to come probably at the next board meeting, right?
Yes, sir.
So we have to decide if we, do we need any more information on that? If you looked on, okay.
We could say yes, we could say
We
no.
can say yes, we can say no. But it is a partial waiver, and it is a ladies football. Semi-pro, it says.
I did have, sorry, Mr. Riddle.
Go ahead.
I had a question about the transportation software.
Right.
Okay, we're
If
going to
we
move
wanna
to
move
that
on.
item. Okay, are we done with A, B, and C, right? The fee waivers? Okay, go ahead, Ms.
For the transportation routing software, did we find this software because they're servicing other school districts around us, or how do we find TransFinder as opposed to?
Right, because do we still have,
VersaTrans. So we have 3
VersaTrans?
major. So it's 3 major routing software companies. It's TransFinder, it's Traversa, and it's VersaTrans.
Okay.
So I did proposals and go-to meetings with all of them to see how the system worked, and TransFinder came out to be the better system as far as accuracy and time. And then I've met these different vendors at different conferences I've gone to, so I know of them. And I went with the one that I think we benefit better from.
Okay.
And
they've. Oh, go ahead, Ms. Anna.
VersaTrans has been with us for how long?
I know at least 12 years.
At least 12 years, and so their system is no longer able to fit what we need in our district.
So what we have now is VersaTrans, and it's on our district server. For right before COVID, we were going to take it off the server because it's a lot for IT to keep up with. We wanted to move to a cloud-based company. So when we did our go-to meeting with VersaTrans, the lag time was too much. So we need to update. So the update was either go with VersaTrans or find another company to go to. So I chose TransFinder because it's faster.
And for clarity, Ms. Williams, the TransFinder is cloud-based
Yes.
software? Okay. So that means our families are going to have to download a different app?
It should be a web address now.
Oh, okay.
So like we have with the VersaTrans MyStop app, there's been a lot of issues with that app too.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to go out and look for something that was more efficient.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have other districts that are using this and are happy with it?
Yes.
Okay, and you've checked that out?
Yes.
Okay, great. Any other questions on this? Okay, let's move on to reports. 6A, schedule of investments. Are there any questions on that? That's pretty routine. Just shows what we're making on our investments. The treasurer's report, did anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Student activity report, any questions on that? COVID-19 funds update, that's 6D. Is there any questions on that?
I want to look at it.
I do have one question.
Yes, go ahead.
There's a asterisk that says this grant is not approved by IEMA. Costs reverted to local funding source.
Yes, that's an Illinois Emergency Management Agency. They did not approve our application in that amount when we originally submitted the grant application.
Can we resubmit or no?
Yeah, we would need to cross-reference that. We don't believe it's been open yet, and this was one of the first funding grants that was available to us in early 2020. So we'll confirm that, but as of now, they denied that,
Oh, so
and
this is
we've
old.
maintained a denial status.
Yeah.
Which grant are we talking about specifically?
COVID-19?
That's the
Okay.
first one, Illinois Emergency Management Public Assistance Grant,
Okay.
$130,000.
So why didn't we get it, and what happened? Why wasn't it not approved?
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Polk.
That grant was primarily for like hospitals and fire stations and those type things. We did call them. I think that we had a great application that was written by Ms. Tate, but it was primarily focused to the first responders.
Okay.
I have another question.
Another question on the COVID grants? Go ahead.
Just 'cause, well, not on the COVID grant. For FY22 for the McKinney-Vento, we've only expensed the 47. Okay.
Staff has really been monitoring that. Ms. Tate and
most of the salaries, there are 2 positions that are not currently filled in that role. We are looking to post, I think it's a social worker position, and was it truancy officer? Outreach officer. So most of that is salaries in that grant.
Okay.
So that's why we have spent so little.
Okay. I'm like, I see.
Oh. Okay.
Oh, okay, okay.
We have extended
That's
time
what I
for
was
that
worried
grant.
about. Okay, thank you,
Correct.
Ms. Tate.
We still have time on that one.
Yes, we still have time.
I was just
Okay.
worried because I was like,
Right,
we have
that's a
one
lot of
semester.
No, we ain't trying to send no money back. Look,
Right,
we done
right,
heard.
right. Okay,
Okay.
thank you. I think we had that question last time, and maybe I just forgot the answer. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you,
No
Ms.
further
Harris.
questions on that? Okay. All right, let's move on to the ISB grant audit update. That's item 6E. Any questions on that one?
What happened with the audit?
The letter's there.
It says they were,
This is something that's good for the business.
says the results of the audit were favorable and resulted in 0 assessed. So, the audit file is closed.
Good evening. So we went through a ISB audit. We gave them access to our system. They manipulated the transactions that we had, and they asked us for information. They did an audit kind of like by building. locations. And we had to supply copies of pay stubs and other information. And yeah, they did come back and say that we were good. A lot of it was the COVID grants, ESSER 1, 2, 3. And they're looking at probably around FY21, some FY22 expenditures. But yeah, turned out good. Don't know that when you're going through it, but
Right.
so
Okay, sounds good. Any questions on this one then?
I got some questions, but I'll have to do it. Later, seeing how we're kind of, I guess, rushing to get done.
All right.
Well, I do have a question.
Go ahead.
The early childhood block grant had 26 instances.
That's good. Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
that, so we have the early childhood block grant. We have teachers and paras at about 6 or 7 different school sites. What we did when we got the grant, we budgeted the salaries and benefits in one account, one location, and never spread it based on location, even though we have teachers and paras at those other sites, and that's what they cited us for.
Okay.
And we were charging
Yeah,
expenditures
I saw
where
all
there
the
was no
$0,
budget.
but I was like, so what's the 26 issues that they had?
Right, right.
And then
Okay.
I saw a lot of them saying you have to change stuff.
Okay, is that it? Anyone else for Mr. Loza? All right, thank you, sir.
Sure.
And the last item here is reports award of our financial reporting achievement.
Woohoo!
Woo-hoo.
Congratulations.
Yes.
And that's a credit to the great work the Ms. Polk's team does on an annual basis. So thank you, Ms. Polk and team. They keep us fiscally solvent every year.
Right. And this is, thank you. Okay, and I believe I accept a call for adjournment. Is there any other things? Okay, congratulations again, Ms. Polk and your department. All right. Thank you. All right.
I make a motion that we adjourn this
Second.
meeting.
Okay, motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting closed. Let's take a, do we want to take a 5-minute break?
5-minute break.
Yeah,
5-minute
please.
break, okay. We'll take a 5-minute break.
Sorry.
Good luck.
for February 21, 2023. Could we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. McBride?
Here.
Mr. Riddle?
Present.
Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak?
Here.
Ms. Leguizamo? Ms. Gonzalez?
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. First item on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes of July 17th, 2022. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Ms. Callahan Wozniak, second by Mr. McBride.
I believe this is where the spelling of Rayvon's name was wrong.
Is that
Yes.
that where it is?
Yes.
Okay, well, I know that there needs to be a correction.
Okay, Ms. Hannah, could you tell us what the correction is?
The
We can amend the
correction
motion.
is under
6B.
6B.
Okay,
And the correction is they need to respell his name as Rayon Edwards,
right.
not Raymond Edwards.
Yep. Okay. Our secretary sees that and will make that correction. Was there any other item that needed to be corrected on those minutes?
No.
Okay.
I don't think.
We could have a roll call then to approve, or I guess, yeah, roll call to approve the minutes as amended.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes.
Ms. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak?
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo? Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
I'm going to pass because I was not at that meeting. All right. Okay, minutes are approved as amended. Okay, we're going to move to, actually, the next ones are informational items. Is there anyone that had any questions on the first one, 5A?
So actually, if I may,
Oh, if you want to go through those?
I just want to mention something about the first one,
Okay,
just
go
so
right ahead.
we're being totally clear. So, anyways, good evening, Superintendent, Vice President Riddle, members of the board, and members of the community. Thank you. So, item A, we're actually, I just found out that there's a scheduling conflict, so
Okay.
We will not have a team member attending.
Right. So
Oh,
that,
so
So
that,
did-
that item is going to be pulled?
Yes, I just found out right before this meeting, so it was too late to take it off. But I just wanted to be clear that none of those team members are able to attend.
Right.
yeah, that was attendance at a free professional learning opportunity provided by the Lake County Regional Office of Education at the campus of Grand Canyon University in Arizona from February 22nd to February 24th of 2023. So that item is being struck.
Too small, sure, sorry.
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Cesario. And the next item is item 5B. Did anybody have any questions on that one?
I'll read it. I'll read it. Sure, no problem.
Okay,
if you don't mind.
No, go ahead, Dr.
So
Cesario.
this is information or request approval for the future purchase of Touch Math for low incident student instruction and intervention. There's a quote that was attached in the amount of $42,668.
And we used this before?
Yes. Go ahead.
And
I'll have
what-
Dr. Bublitz come and ask.
And what are the positive results of this?
So we do have teachers using it at Clearview and I believe Hyde Park. This is something that I know that Cook was also asking, so it came up during SBB, and so we said we wanted to provide it for all of our low incidence classrooms for the individual students who need it to provide equity. I'd have to go and look deep. I can tell you our DLM alternate assessment for many of our students with low incidence hover around 10 to 11% meets or exceeds for math. So we want to help them increase their skills in math for that alternate assessment. It's a multi-sensory and kinesthetic approach to math instruction, and it's literally touch math. You touch the numbers. I haven't taught it, but you touch the numbers. It helps build a relationship for the students, often with cognitive disabilities, to the math.
And these are students that are that have been integrated into the regular classrooms?
They're low incidence. They likely are more in special ed than gen ed, but some do get out, and the goal would be to build their basic skills to the point where they could go out more, whether it's science or math.
Can you describe low
Yes.
Just so it's clear.
So our low incidence students may have a variety of disabilities. Some may have autism, high functioning, academically, but maybe not socially or communication wise, or behavior wise. Also students with cognitive disabilities, traumatic brain injury, such as that, and our multiple disabilities, medically fragile, etc. So they do have a wide range of academic and functional skills, but the many different disabilities that they may have, we have programming, and we call that low incidence because it's a lower incident of disability than others.
Mhm. And this is just another support for them.
It is. We're trying to build a more robust set of interventions and instructional materials for our low incidence students because we really rely a lot on the teachers, and it's called unique curriculum. It's not really a curriculum, but it's another platform we use for those students in the alternate assessment. And we know, and the teachers have asked, we've surveyed and talked to them, that we need a more robust set of curricular materials to address not only just the DLM alternative assessment, but the core curriculum as they move up in their skills. We do not have a very robust, but we are a set of interventions and instructional materials yet, but that is a goal for us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Ms. Anna?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, go ahead.
So how many classrooms is this gonna be for? Because I believe the original amount was much higher. And then the people who budgeted, the low incidence people, were told we could only have 10,000. I don't know if that's what this amount is. I can't see that.
It's for any low incidence classroom or student that may need it. The original assessment was $10,000. We were able to amend our IDEA grant to include a greater amount when we realized the demand for it. So we're really fortunate to be able to provide that with equity for all our classrooms.
So any student in the low incidence will have the touch math through this?
If that's what their individual need is. Any
So it
DL
has to
student could
be-
have it for that matter if they needed it, but likely it would be low incidence.
Does it have to be specifically put into their IEP?
No, we don't want to put curriculum into the IEP. We want to address the goals, the skills, but we want to be flexible in the approaches we have. So whether we want to use Orton, Gillingham, Wilson, Sunday system, whatever, we can have an option to use what we think is best. We can trial. We can use it as an intervention. If it works, great, increase it. If it doesn't work, try something else. So we don't like to put curriculum into an IEP. Obviously, there are exceptions for various reasons, but we do not want to do that.
So this was approved up to 42,000 now? Yes?
Yes, that's what we're
Yes.
looking for on that
Right.
quote.
That's fine.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bublitz. Okay, you want to do the next one, Dr. Cesario?
Sure. So item C is Whittier Professional Development, and this is seeking approval. We will be seeking approval for one of our teachers to attend professional development on Orton Gillingham explicit reading instruction. That's phonics and phonemic awareness. It's a virtual training, and you see these come along every once in a while. We've had them in several meetings where it's just one teacher, and it's often because it's either a new teacher or it's someone refreshing their skills. So I believe that's the instance here as well. Correct? Yes.
But
So
why-
that is yes.
Okay, we you know that we have been talking about phonics and everything, and putting it in all of our classrooms with our kids. So why can't we send more than one person for professional development around this initiative with phonics?
Sure.
I mean, I'm not understanding.
So most of the teachers, if not all of the teachers in this building, have already had the training. So
In
this is
this
somebody
building?
in this particular building using this particular method, the Orton Gillingham, that program rather, for phonics and phonemic awareness. So
Okay, well, we got
And we are, and we're-
15 other buildings.
we do, and so some of those other buildings are also using other forums. So this is one type of program, and there are other programs that are available. Again, this is just because this person either is renewing or refreshing themselves or did not have the training before. And we have other programs going on, Ms. Hannah, as well, and
Yeah,
we'll talk about some
I
of those.
understand that.
Yeah,
but
I understand your
we
question.
need
I
to
just
be
want to.
consistent.
Right.
We need to be consistent across the buildings, because I mean, we have always known it in our school district that we have very mobile
Correct.
student population, and it's not fair for a student to be at one school and they have this training, okay, but then when they go over here, then that training doesn't exist because we haven't gotten to that school yet. And so it's not beneficial to the students. It's not beneficial to students, and that's what we're here for, to educate students.
Agreed. And so there is consistency with CKLA in the phonemic awareness and phonics that we're using in the early primary across all the schools. So there is consistency. There are some other schools that prior to this were using different programming, and because they've showed success, I believe McCall was another school that's using Orton Gillingham as well, correct? Yeah. And so those schools were using those programs. So again, they were seeing success with those programs. They've been in their schools successful, and we've given the autonomy to those schools to do that. Whereas with the other schools, we're being very consistent. And you also know that we have some other plans that we're also developing around phonics and phonemic awareness and around the science of reading as well, so that we can move into all grade levels. So those are some things that we're working on. We agree with you on the consistency piece. You're absolutely right. That's the foundation of the curriculum writing work that we're doing, and ensuring that the programming and the curriculum is consistent.
Right.
Thanks. The next item here is item D for Edmentum renewal, and the Edmentum renewal is what we use at the high school and at AOEC to support students with credit recovery. And so this is a renewal of 1 year. This is a program that we have been using consistently for the last 5 years, I believe. And so that 1 year renewal is in the amount of $212,070.88.
Is that consistent with last year? Did it go up?
It is. I think it went up a little bit, didn't it?
And this program is very successful with our students. They're getting a lot of credit recovery through
Well,
Edmentum.
it is serving the purpose. We are able to capture a lot of the credits. It was especially helpful when students were unable to attend classes in person. So it's been helpful. We are the team at the high school, as well as Amanda and Jason, have been working to look at ways that we can adjust this, add on to it, do something in-house, and that may in the future reduce the cost. And that's the other reason why we went with a 1 year, because there is also an opportunity through Roe to have opportunities for credit recovery. We don't want to be stuck on a 3-year contract if we can reduce this. And I would suggest that we don't. That's a discussion for another time. But it would ideally, I'd like to see this reduced over the next 2 years, and partner with Roe and do something in house. But again, that's part of a conversation for another time.
Yeah, because I was going to ask if it was North Central accredited.
I believe we've had this. It is accredited, and it does allow for this. Is Edmentum is something that is used not only in Waukegan, it's used in a number of other school settings to provide credit recovery. So I remember the question, and I believe we looked into it.
And I've never gotten an answer whether it was North Central credit.
I don't know the specifics, but I can get back to you, Ms. Hannah, and look at. You're asking for the North Central accreditation,
Yeah,
and I can look into that.
And that's because of with the credits and stuff like that, there were particular incidents with our students that were going off to college.
Okay, I will look into that. And all right, I wrote that down. E is the renewal of school mint licenses, and this specifically, what we're using is this is specifically for Whetstone, correct? So Whetstone is one of the platforms on School Mint, and what we're using that for is to really document and assist with coaching, so we can put detailed messages so that those so our principals can have that information and excuse me, provide that feedback to teachers in writing. And we can keep a record of that. It helps with keeping records of classroom visits, helps to support team meetings. And again, that coaching with feedback is really critical. You can use that, and you have a record of that and go back to that, tie that to a timeline. It's very helpful. All right, F, upgrade of UPS systems for MDF network closets. I'm going to ask Dr. Cuevas to come up to answer questions about this. But I'll just read this brief description here.
Could you please decode the...
He's going to have to, that's why I asked him to come up to help decode the acronyms, because they're not here. But so the Information Technology Services Department needs to upgrade UPS systems for all MDF network closets. The current UPS batteries are no longer under warranty support, and these batteries are failing. ITS will upgrade the batteries units to APC Smart UPS Lithium Ion SRTL 5kVA. Okay, so these units will provide battery backup for all schools, MDF closets, and network switches for power support upon school outage, with the minimum of 30 minutes of uptime on UPS. So Dr. Cuevas will decipher these acronyms and other things.
Good evening, Vice President, Superintendent, board members, and community members. In very simple words, these are battery backups. In the case that we have a power failure, these battery backups will provide electricity to the equipment for up to 30 minutes.
I thought that we just got that system, that battery.
No,
the generator and stuff for blackouts and stuff.
Generator is only for Brookside campus. This is for the district-wide for all the buildings. At each building, we have IDF and we have MDF, where we have equipment.
Could you please tell us? And I don't want all that.
So it's the data closet rooms.
Okay.
Where we have switches, routers, and these battery backups, basically in the case of a power failure, these battery backups will consume the power for up to 30 minutes. Or if there's a power flick, that we lost power and we receive power back, basically this equipment will protect the switches that we have on the routers. It's a source protector too as well.
Okay.
I had a question. Dr. Cuevas, how long do these batteries last? They're pretty expensive to replace. I see $268,000. Wow.
Yes. So normally the life cycle of these batteries is for every 2 years, so that we can, it's like a cartridge. You remove the battery and you can install another one. Depending on the maintenance, on the usage, it can last for 5 years, 6 years, but it all depends on the usage.
Wow. Wow, that's expensive batteries. And so we have to replace these every few years then, at the max 5 years.
It all depends.
It all depends. Right.
Yes. So the ones that we have right now, they're out of warranty, and basically they're failing. And when I say that they're failing, we're getting notification from the actual batteries that there's
So what
errors.
would happen after 30 minutes if the power stayed down?
then basically that equipment would not have electricity.
It would not, it would die.
It would die.
So it's something that we need then?
Yes.
It is.
And with the new battery,
It's 30 minutes.
only 30 minutes?
Only 30 minutes. So
Sorry, can I just ask, so real quick, so in that 30 minutes though, we would identify generators and things like that so that we can supply power, supplementary power to those MDF and IDF rooms?
So what is going to happen within those 30 minutes? We're going to contact operations and we're going to ask operation, do we have an ETA when the power is coming back? So they're going to contact our power provider, Comet. They're going to let us know the power is coming back in 3 hours. So now we know that we need to start shutting down those systems properly.
Oh, you have to shut them down, okay. And the alternative to having these or not having these batteries would be systems could crash?
Not only they can crash, then the configuration is going to be corrupted when the power comes back.
Okay, gotcha.
But it also serves like a surge protector too, so if there's a flicker, it protects against that as well.
Okay.
So I think that's, yeah, okay.
So what type of warranty
That's a good question.
Dr. Cuevas
are
has such a
these
hard
batteries under?
So normally you have 1 year.
Well, Ms. Gonzalez?
I was gonna say I don't envy your job, Dr.
No,
Cuevas.
no.
This is.
I love it.
I'm like batteries,
Oh my
flicks,
gosh.
like what?
All right, something we need.
And this is for the particular unit that we installed, and so we're going to the company to get the battery for that particular system.
We're changing the whole system. Basically, you have a box, and in that box, you can actually have the batteries. So now, because they're new models, we need to change the actual box with new batteries as well.
So does this also supply the teachers' devices as well? Just the students?
These devices is where all our network data traffic flows.
All the network data.
All the
Okay,
network data.
everything.
Everything. This is basically how we can monitor the web filtering, how the firewall can inspect all the files. It's for all the data traffic.
All data.
All data traffic. So if these systems are off, no data will flow.
And while you're up there, I got one more
Go ahead,
question.
Ms. Anna.
Have you found a way or explored a way to scramble phones, the cell phones, the student cell phones in the buildings?
When you use the word scramble, it's basically to disable, correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
well, they can't get on.
Unfortunately, that's not legal. We cannot do that.
Well, we gotta. I don't know now, cause there was an article. Need to look it up, where a school district, I think it was here in Lake County. They fixed. They had their system where the students could not get on their personal phones during school.
What we can control, the students, they don't connect personal phones to our network infrastructure. That's not allowed. And we cannot control the towers for AT&T, for Verizon, or any private provider. That's something that we have no control at all.
No.
I started to send you that article.
Please,
Yeah.
and I will take a look.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it. And that's something we would maybe not ever want to do anyway. Parents would be up in arms about that. All right. All right. Next
All right,
item there
next.
is G. Go ahead,
Sure.
Dr. Sisson.
Next, so this is at the Washington campus. This is information related to AP African American Studies course proposal. So provide additional AP course opportunity for our high school students. It's intended to develop students' ability to examine the breadth of the African American experience through the examination of a variety of rich sources drawing from the fields of literature, arts and humanities, social sciences, geography, political science, and more.
And I got some questions.
Sure.
A couple questions.
I
As
do too.
I read through this entire item here, both attachments, and I do have some questions. is you're talking about putting in AP African American Studies. Is there regular African American Studies that students are taking now?
Good evening, Board. My name is Nate Weber. I'm the K-12 Social Science Coordinator, and there is an AP, or there is an African American Studies course students are taking right now.
And it's well attended?
Yeah, we currently have one section of it.
Okay. Why is it only a pilot?
So the College Board started this course actually it's in process this year at only about, I want to say 100 schools nationwide. They're expanding the pilot next year to roughly 350 to 500 schools. And then in school year 24-25, it will be a full-fledged course.
So,
It's part of the College Board's process to basically vet the course and make sure that it is completely, fully fledged out, so that when it's presented nationwide, that all of the various bugs that could go along with the course have already been removed.
I had African American Studies at Carthage College.
And
it was not a pilot.
No, and that's at the university level. At the high school level for AP, they have to basically draw upon many sources, and maybe even including Carthage with their African American Studies program, so that when they provide it to high school students, it's basically aligned to what they would see at the university level, so that when they can pass the course and do well on the exam, they could get credit for college.
Okay.
So essentially they're taking a college course at the high school level.
Well, I don't know, because you all are talking about you all are starting the units with the dysphoria.
Mm-hmm. So the
wait a minute. African dynasties were before the dysphoria. So why are you starting with the slave dysphoria?
So it's my understanding that the course, which is actually outlined by the College Board, we have no control over that. In fact, we have to fulfill an audit that makes sure we're holding fidelity to what the College Board provides. But it's my understanding that the course actually starts around 800 CE, the Common Era, so before the diaspora, with some of the Bantu migrations. That's in Unit 1, and then gets into more of the transatlantic slave trade and the diaspora after that. So it starts a bit earlier than...
What about the African dynasties?
It mentions that in Unit 1, in the course proposal.
Okay, because let me just tell you my problem. I don't want our students to think that African American history started with slavery, because it did not. And we need to go back to where the history is. If we're going to do it, we need to do it correctly.
Absolutely, right. Absolutely. And the courses, as it was been outlined by hundreds of professionals, starts earlier than just transatlantic slavery. So this isn't a course of just basically African American misery. It's also triumph as well. The full breadth, as the course proposal says. So it starts before transatlantic slavery and isn't just a tale of one misfortune after the other.
And so when the see, you guys are going to be writing a curriculum.
Sort of. The curriculum's written by the College Board. Basically, we have to figure out how we can tailor it to our students, as basically all AP courses work.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
I have one real quick.
Oh, and one more, baby, to go with this, and then I'm done with this. And then we are going to only train one person, and I'm not understanding that, because if we only have one person trained, what happens if that person is absent or quits or something, and then we don't have anybody else? to take over, and so I don't know if that is a good decision.
So for year one, we're looking to train our teacher that is already targeted and has accepted the assignment for next year. So after year one, we could look to train other teachers to, if there is a need for it, and make sure we have more people who are qualified to teach the course. As it is right now, there is no official criteria as to who can teach the course, as it is a pilot. So if the unfortunate were to happen and we were to lose our targeted teacher, we could find an alternate who could be trained and be qualified to teach the AP
I think
course.
we should be proactive in that.
Understood. Understood.
I had some questions
Yes.
and then.
Go ahead, Mr.
Or
Gonzalez.
Victor, though.
Yes.
You could go first if you want.
Okay, my I kind of had two questions. I thank you for bringing this to the board, Mr. Weber. Mr. Weber?
Weber.
Weber.
Just
Okay,
like the grill.
I'm like Weber, sociology.
Yeah.
Weber. Okay.
No relation.
Yeah. I think this is important. I have my opinion about AP courses in the College Board, but I think that this is important for students to get college credit if they can. Do students have to take the regular African American Studies course to then go into the AP course?
They do not. Currently, there are no
that
prerequisites
makes
to take
no
the course.
sense. I think it should be.
And then is the target teacher the one that teaches the regular course as well?
She is.
Okay, awesome. And that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so to start, honestly, I'm very excited for this course. Honestly, I have been seeing a lot about it. I am very excited for it and waiting the board to do what they need to do about it. Honestly, I am one of those students that will be first line to be put into the class next year, honestly, hoping onto the board. Honestly, I have talked to my counselor and stuff like that. I have a lot of friends that are very excited for the course itself, honestly, and what it has to teach us about African American history. To board member Hannah's point that you said about dysphoria and the complexity of like the slave trade and early African kingdoms, I have the official course framework that comes from the College Board. Obviously, Mr. Weber may have something different, honestly, that comes from the College Board. From what I see specifically, the slave trade and the transatlantic slave trade and the Middle Passage and all that stuff of colonial America is in Unit 2. Unit 1 does specify early African societies, early Western African empires,
That's
kingdoms,
right,
city-states,
that's right.
and global politics.
That's right.
That's what
right,
is done
and
first, then it goes into the
absolutely.
American colonies.
And they did, and they didn't start it at.
No, they do not start in 1609. They do not start at that
They-
point,
they
going on
didn't
forward.
You all did not start it from what he was just talking about. You started it at.
The very start.
When
the very
history
start.
begins.
And so they're missing a part.
So as
that's-
that goes.
That's in Unit 1, right?
Yes,
So-
that is in Unit
yeah.
1. From what I see, obviously, Mr. Weber, if you have more information, please jump in if I get something wrong.
No, you pretty much spoke into the course. The course offering guide is available online. It's basically public domain, so anybody can access it. And that's kind of the nice thing about the AP. It gives our students to a nationalized curriculum. So basically, what our students would get would be the same thing that the other 350 to 500 schools would be receiving. The same highly rigorous, massive opportunity of a course that we hopefully can offer our students.
Honestly, the course sounds pretty good. Honestly, I have a lot of opinions and stuff like that, but I'll be taking it. But honestly, questions about that I have honestly is that prerequisites we were mentioning, but when I was looking in the agenda itself and to like the course proposal, what's going to be put in the COG itself, it does say a prerequisite of like either world history of world civilizations or AP Hug and U.S. history or APUSH. Is that going to be considered the prerequisite, or is that just something students have to take as the course flow goes between grade level?
Essentially, the only prerequisite is that it's essentially open to sophomores and higher. So essentially, you have to have taken either History of World Civilizations, either the honors version of that, or AP Human Geography, which is what we offer as an AP course to freshmen. But as I stated before, there is no official prerequisite other than it's essentially open to students in grades 10 through 12.
then at that point, do we have like some sort of estimate or like, I guess, projection of students taking this class from other courses or using like information from other courses? Just for example, AP psychology. Do we have like an idea of how many students will be taking it?
So I think that's a great question. One of the other pieces to offering another AP course here is to expand the offerings. If we look at research, expanding the AP opportunities really allows more students to get involved, and it allows for greater access. So that's another piece here. I think the projection piece is that's why we're trying to have as many offerings as possible. And ultimately, we want to make sure that we have enough students to hold the course. This folds into a question about programming. If we only have 2 students in a course, that poses a big issue. We need to have a minimum number of students to be interested and to sign up for this, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we're offering a number of AP courses to, again, fall in line with what the research is showing us to provide greater access, because providing that greater access to, and that's one of the reasons why the prerequisite is really essentially just being a sophomore or higher, so that we can, again, provide greater access to students. So I think, I don't think we really did any work on looking at projections, but
we did.
Yeah? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
So part of the curriculum council process to submit this to the union was they asked that we sort of look at comparatives, and the one we looked at was AP Psych, and they have around 120 students enrolled in AP Psych right now. It's a very popular course, which owes to its very rich content and the fabulous instructors that teach it. Students know. So it's a very popular course, and we also did a survey of our 8th graders, 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders, and 12th graders, and we listed all of our social science courses that we have in the COG, and roughly 20% expressed interest in enrolling in AP African American Studies.
I have 2 more questions, sorry.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
You want to go first, Charlotte?
Well,
we
got one in the audience too.
Yeah. Yes.
Ms. Lensing, you want to go first?
And 2
Right.
of them back there.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Weber.
Hi, Ms.
I
Lansing.
love this as a program option for our students. As far as the course content and the selected works, I get that it's in collaboration with the College Board. Just for my personal knowledge, is the Black History 365 textbook going to be implemented, possibly?
So myself and the teacher who's going to be teaching that course actually looked at that text, and we weren't in love with it, to be totally honest, and we're looking at other texts. We think we found one that we like. It's called Freedom on My Mind. I think it's published by McGraw-Hill. And it really covers a lot of the history of it. However, with a course like this, because it's rich in the humanities and literature, the bulk of the sources will be housed in an online platform called AP Classroom, which if you take AP US History, AP World, AP Euro, basically it's just a ton of documents and resources online which teachers can use to print out or what have you. So the bulk of the resources could be taken from there, but we're also looking at a supplementary source that students can have that's tangible so that they can work on some of their literacy skills along with history, and we will explore other sources as well. Myself and a few other members of the district are going to be attending the Dream Deferred Conference in March in Chicago, and one of the sessions is on this course, so we're hoping that there can be further insight in terms of what sort of resources we should use from folks who have already taught the course. So because it's a pilot, in terms of what people use as resources, it's not exactly robust quite yet, but we are exploring every possible avenue so that we can provide the best course we can for Waukegan students.
I love the energy that you're bringing to it. Since you are K through 12, I'm just going to add a quick side. Are we looking at how to integrate better African American studies with the younger years as well with the current curriculum?
Yeah, so one of the hopeful benefits of this course is that being connected to a network of professionals that teach this course, that can give us greater insight in terms of how this course has been implemented. And then part of my role as a coordinator, I can hopefully use some of those pieces of insight for our 6 through 8 curriculum mapping, which is currently underway, and make more intentional use of basically a culturally responsive curriculum within Waukegan.
Perfect, thank you.
Great, thank you. Is there somebody else in the?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, and Miss Dr. Brown back there.
Dr. Brown, go ahead.
Is it typical for AP or College Board to offer college credit for the pilot year of things?
Yeah, so this current year, 22-23, they are not offering credit because it's year one of the pilot. Next year, they are offering college credit. However, like all AP courses, it's somewhat dependent on the university you're applying to. However, in the state of Illinois, every single student who goes to a state-sponsored school who gets a 3 or a higher on the AP exam gets credit. However, if you go to a private school, like Carthage, you may not necessarily get credit depending on their own policies. But no matter what, taking an AP course looks amazing on your college transcript and is going to really do great things for you.
Ms. Wozniak?
So, what happens if we have 100 students sign up for this? Would we do a second?
Yeah, so we can,
Course?
we can
This
open
year?
up 4 sections of that, and we can adjust. That would be a great problem.
I'd love to have that problem,
Yeah.
but I just was curious if we're prepared to
We
do
can
that.
be flexible.
Right, well, I hope,
I had 2
hopefully
questions
we're
on
going
this
to
one.
advertise.
Right, right.
So the next steps pending board approval would be to aggressively campaign in U.S. history classes and government classes and HWC classes to our current high school students to inform them on the course and encourage them, if they are interested, to speak to their counselors.
Right. Ms. Gonzalez, you had one other question?
So, and then this doesn't have to be answered right now. I think this is a logistic question, but just something to keep in mind is if we're expecting, if it's open as a class for sophomores and then we have sections that for the juniors and seniors, is that like, can we provide a stipend for teachers that like go back and forth, or like is that factored into this? So that was just like one thing.
Yeah, so
I don't know how that works.
Yeah, so one of our AP psychology teacher already does that.
Okay.
So that's already common practice, and
Okay.
that could be easily adjusted and accounted for.
Okay.
Super.
And then the second question is this the training, does it happen routinely? Is this like a one-time cost where you get the training and then you don't have to get a refresher for like a couple years, or
So generally speaking, when you teach an AP course, the prerequisite for this is a pilot, so it's a little bit special, but other ones you have to be endorsed in your content area,
Okay.
which means you have to have a certain amount of credit hours.
Mhm.
However, with this, there is no specific endorsement. However, they do require a training. Now, there's a few options across the country over the summer. We are trying to do the in-person one, which is at one of 3 locations. I think it's Washington, D.C., Kansas City, and in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
There's also a virtual option, but we think there would be a greater benefit to do it in person.
Okay. And my last question.
And then I was going to answer. And basically, once you are trained,
Mhm.
there's no specific requirement for ongoing training. However,
Okay.
every single year you do have to submit an updated audit of the course, which is essentially your course proposal and your curriculum guide. And so basically you are forced to continuously update your course to cater to what the College Board requires.
Okay, and you mentioned the Dream Deferred Conference.
Correct.
Is that going to come to board approval? I don't remember seeing that.
The amount is actually less than what is required for board approval because it is local.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Mr. McBride.
You mentioned curriculum, that textbook, Freedom on My Mind. Do you have a textbook on that?
Do I have a copy on me?
Yeah, do you have one?
I have a sample, but I gave it to our teacher so she could review
I'd
it.
like to see that textbook, that Freedom
Yeah,
on My Mind. which
absolutely.
is-
Yeah, me too.
Also, she made reference to earlier, we shouldn't start at high school. We should start at middle school and grade school.
Agreed.
I learned about Abraham Lincoln. I had to do the Constitution to pass certain things. I have a great knowledge of history, of American history. I mean, I'm kind of inundated with that, but I don't know. I didn't learn anything till I got older to learn my own self, to go to Barnes and Noble, wherever I need to do to pick up a book to learn about Black history. But I should have been able to learn that while I was younger. So I'm saying you need to start early. Don't wait till you get to sophomore, then freshman, but you didn't even say nothing about freshmen. Yeah, you just said sophomore and seniors.
'Cause
But
the
you need to
requirement.
start early. That's
Agreed.
the bottom line too.
Right. Right. So there's a lot of excitement up here, and we really want to thank you for. Oh, did I miss somebody? Yes.
Miss
Yolanda.
Fulton.
Yeah, Ms. Fulton, go ahead. Oh, can we get a mic?
That will it, if we have 100 kids sign up, and we know the teacher that is now teaching African American Studies, not the AP section. So will the AP go in the place of African American Studies, or will we try to find someone else to teach the regular African American Studies?
So if numbers are, sorry, if there are huge numbers for AP African American Studies, we're not looking to create any sort of zero-sum AP to regular African American Studies game, but if there is a need for it, we will have to have perhaps more than one person teach our AP and African American Studies courses. That is something we can prepare on how to do.
And I do want to reiterate what everyone else was saying about the curriculum also. I don't know if you've seen this famous speech. There was a black woman that worked for the CIA, very high up in the CIA, and she had never looked at her daughter's homework because her husband would. And she spoke about how we started off talking about slavery and all this civil rights stuff, and not starting off to say black people were kings and queens to begin with. So even if we don't have that at the elementary or middle school, I would think we would just want to talk about our kids being kings and queens and not about slavery. I would prefer that.
Absolutely.
I agree.
I'm looking for that textbook, Freedom on My Mind.
Yeah, I'll try to. We just have a sample that they gave us, but I'll get you a copy.
And what was that one, Miss Lindsay, you said?
Black History 365.
Black History 365.
Yeah.
It's been vetted.
Yes.
I would defer to Mr. Weber's opinion on it.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Weber, and your team for bringing this, forward to our district, and we're pretty excited, as you can see, about what's going to happen with this AP course. So
Yeah, and
thank you so much.
And I would really like to see more teachers training in African American studies, in teaching it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful idea.
A diverse group.
Right. And as Mr. McBride said too, I think, we want to consider this moving down to the middle schools as well, so that they get some of this history before they move up to high school.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, I think we are down to
E-rate.
H.
Oh, yeah, H.
All right, I'm going to ask Ms. Jennifer Rice-Sanchez to come up and talk about the Jocelyn Center Community Partnership on mental health first aid toolkit and PD for our staff.
But we said.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board of
evening.
Education, Vice President, Superintendent, community, and colleagues. So this is a wonderful opportunity with one of our community partnerships, specifically around supports that our students have been asking for. You all have been asking for, our schools have been asking for. And so what this is going to do over a few years is it's going to train up to 1,500 staff members around, metaphorically, a mental health toolkit, right? The metaphorical toolkit, right? Not real tools. And it's really about preventative support for our staff so that we're not reactionary around students' needs and or students that are in crisis, but we are preventative. And it's really around building the capacity for all of our staff members around a common language and a common understanding about how we are a care team and how we support all of our students. And so this is that opportunity for us.
I have a question/comment.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Rice-Sanchez, and you guys for looking into this. I really like the Jocelyn Center. I think they're a really great resource. I'm glad that we're working with them. We've worked with them in other capacities. But my only comment here is that we have heard before some of our internal staff being interested in, and Dr. Cesar, you already know, like, we have internal staff that would like to also share their knowledge, their expertise, and be able to be that resource inside of our schools for this
Yeah.
kind of professional
Most
development.
definitely.
Yeah.
And so-
I'm not saying that we pick and choose. I'm saying we could do both.
No, and I think that the need is great enough to have both,
Right.
and that's actually where this partnership came from.
Okay.
Is that a number of departments were collaborating, diverse learners with teaching and learning. So we had social workers and psychologists, counselors. We had a number of team members working together to focus on de-escalation training, which was something that our teachers had asked for.
Okay.
And so the team was able to do it. They had to work diligently to do it. But here's the one thing we wanted to focus on is not just doing one and done.
Right.
Is that there is a need, and that's what I spoke to Jocelyn about, is that, and we've been talking for quite some time, like what are our needs, what do we want to do, how are we involving folks, and that's what it is that it's just the bandwidth. Can our folks do it? They most certainly can do it, and they do it. They do it all the time. But they also have other streams of work that they're engaging in as well. And so this is something that we want to make sure that is ongoing, that we're not just teaching them or providing them with this in-service or professional development and then walking away. I think everybody learns just like children do. Adults learn at different paces, and they may need more additional time. And that's what this is for. We had a meeting with some union members today, and that was one of the pieces of information that came up too, is being really proactive. Let's not wait until everything is at the end, but giving teachers and staff members the tools to be able to identify and needs within themselves, within their colleagues, within students, and some skills and some tools to really assist and de-escalate and or just really counsel or work with students or direct students to resources depending on what's happening. And so I think they've outlined some really great ideas, and like you said, they're a community partner, and so that's the idea here, is that we're partnering with community agency, but also utilizing our own own talent from within. Right. Great question.
So, Dr. Sarah, how is that going to work? I mean, they're coming into the building. How is it going to actually work?
Yep, that's a really great question too. So that's one of the things we're talking about, and that's why we've mapped it out. What are we doing now? What are we going? Because it's going to come up next week at the board meeting for approval, and that's why it's not just a contract for this year, but for several years. Right. Talking about coming up with how are we going to accommodate the busy schedules of staff members and teachers, and so that's one of the things that Jennifer is going to work on, working out methods and ways where we can accommodate the needs of those folks. And so if they can't do it during the day, then we're going to try to figure out something. We're going to use professional development days. We only have one left, and we can't, we can use some of that, but I don't want to misinform or misdirect people and let them think that whole day is going to be dedicated to that. But we're going to look for opportunities where we can between now and the end of the year. And if we can continue throughout the summer, we're going to continue throughout the summer, and then develop a schedule and a cadence for when we can conduct these meetings and these trainings. But we want them to be ongoing. We don't want them to be one and done. We want them to be ongoing. We're trying to be responsive to the feedback that our teachers and staff members have given us.
The idea is great. I'm just trying to figure out how it's going to work.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's a good, yeah.
So, just I guess on that for Mr. McBride, the $28K is for the 4.5-hour training, or is it several?
It's all 3 years, I think.
Yeah, and it's
Go ahead.
it is that long of a training. It's just for multiple roles and responsibilities within our multiple hats and staff members, right? So this is a big lift and like kind of pulling everyone together, like we're saying with that language of overtime. How are we going to make sure that we are feeding and watering everyone along the way? And so the 28 is for overtime for that training, and and it's about 30 to 40 participants at a time, and up to, I believe that it's 100, people at a time.
Right?
Yep.
So it's So we wanted to make sure that people were learning in an environment that was comfortable to them. So we didn't want to force people to come in person. If they wanted to do that on their own, we wanted to be able to take those classes virtually. But then we did want to have a component where it was smaller, where folks could, in a smaller group, discuss concerns that they might have or something that they were uncomfortable with. So we're also trying to address it in that way.
Okay. Thank you.
My last question was, there's somebody else. Go ahead, Ms. Lensing. Maybe I could just ask my question because it's very quick.
Sure.
Was this going to be just for staff right now? Are we going to also work with kids in this?
Yeah, that's actually towards the end is really how do we then start to build the capacity of our students. So ultimately, we have our service providers right now that are within our buildings that do that. But that could be a conversations that we can have with them in the future.
Okay.
Yeah, especially as they continue to write grants for our community,
Right.
which is really powerful.
Right. I was thinking especially for our high school kids. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm confused.
Go ahead, Ms. Lindsay.
Mr. Riddle, you touched on it because in your attachment it says they're also taking into consideration possibly training teens. So I think that's what you just addressed.
Right.
In terms of after the training, can you just give a little more detail around the check-in points for those who have been trained to make sure that they're on par with how their training was intended for them to respond in these situations?
I don't have the exact details of how we will progress monitor that, but we'll have that for as details within our documents for next Tuesday. So we'll have exactly what they're doing as far as their grant, the exact narrative for that.
But also one of the things that we do right now after professional development is we do survey and look for feedback so that we can take that to make adjustments as necessary.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I think we got it. Okay. Thank you so much for this presentation. Can we move on to E-rate upgrade?
You next.
Dr. Cesario.
Okay, this is an E-rate upgrade district-wide for network switching. The Information Technology Services Department is submitting the E-rate project upgrade network switching for 2023-2024. This is an annual FCC E-rate funded network project for Category 2. They will upgrade 255 network switches to Aruba CX 6300M as the current HP 5500 end of sale production in March 2017. This project will exhaust all E-rate funding for the district's remaining term through the year 2026.
Did anybody have any questions on this? No? Dr. Cesario, I had just one. What happens, this is exhausting our E-rate funds and we don't get any through 2026. What happens if something else needs to be done? We've got to pay for it locally?
This is for Category 2. When we receive E-rate funds, you have Category 1, that's separate. That's basically what we use to cover for Internet service provider. Category 2 is a separate line item that is more specific for hardware.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So will we have exhausted that Category 2 up until 2026? We won't be replenished?
That's correct.
Okay. And if we have other needs, we'll have to address those through local funding?
Something that is very important to mention, in the last 4 years, we have taken care of the Category 2 upgrades in the district, so we're in good shape.
Okay, super, great, thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Cuevas. Don't go too far.
So is the legislation, Dr. Cuevas, where E-rates won't be, the E-rate grants won't be available anymore? They're cutting them out, period?
That's a very important question that every year we ask our consultant. So every year E-rate, they make modifications. So we don't know until the legislation provides the funds. So every year we need to keep an eye. That's why we take fully advantage when we have the money. We want to use the money right away in the case that they change their funding structure in the future.
And we need to keep in contact with our federal legislators.
That's correct.
Because it's a federal program.
Right.
That's correct. And actually we provide recommendations through our E-rate consultant that he advocates in Washington, D.C. With our own suggestions as well.
Right. Okay.
All right. Next item J is the Ikahu wireless heat map. And the ITS department will have compiled an Ikahu wireless heat mapping design. This Wi-Fi heat map design is to improve Wi-Fi classrooms coverage by capturing signal strengths and dead communication zones. This heat mapping will identify wall construction material and depth, drywall, brick, and identify radio signal transmission interference, microwaves, that impact connectivity.
So you can translate that, Dr. Cesario. Are we just heat mapping our buildings to determine where there's no good service?
That's correct. The idea of this is we're going to do a scanning to identify if we have any dead zones where the Wi-Fi is not strong enough, and especially we want to double check that all the classrooms have a very strong signal. That's the whole purpose.
Right. And if we find out that we have some dead spaces, then you're going to come back to us for remediation.
That's correct.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
Okay, the last, well, item
Yes,
K here
K.
is the NAB Show Video Production Conference, and the ITS department is planning to send 2 staff members to participate in the 2023 NAB Show and Conference. The NAB Show is the largest event for media, video production, and technology.
Okay. Any questions on that? Yes. Ms. Wozniak, did you have a question?
No.
No.
He's saying he's going.
Okay, he's going. He's going.
Yeah, because
All
that
right.
was what I was going to
That's-
ask.
And the
Yes.
new member, right?
Yeah.
And the new staff member as well.
Yes,
So
okay.
Andrew and then the new staff member as well.
Great,
Oh,
great.
okay.
All right, that's good. That's Las Vegas. Okay, I think that's it, and now we move to our presentation, which I believe is in video, on the middle of the year data.
Yep, so I'll ask,
This is pre-recorded again?
I'll ask Dr. Brown to come up to help facilitate.
Unbelievable.
Before you start. Good evening, Board Vice President, Superintendent, members of the board, and community. Yes, the presentation is recorded. Copies were online, and we will give you the enhanced copy. But I just wanted to offer a suggestion for you, because when we do this, it's a lot of data.
Yes, it is.
It includes, and I'll talk about this in the presentation, it includes grade level data, school level data, and race ethnicity data for reading and math, all split up. Again, this is a suggestion for you in terms of how to maybe digest some of this, because we'll go through this each time. I've had the pleasure of serving on a couple of different committees with a couple of different board members, and so those committees are specific to have a specific purpose. So all of you kind of divide up into those different committees. You might consider thinking about the data in terms of separate entities. So if, for example, if your interest is more so K2, math, your interest might be middle school, reading, and so on. That might be a way for you to focus in, dig down a little bit deeper into a particular area, and then collectively, you're all still here to be able to ask questions about any area, but it might make it a little bit easier for you. And that's just a thought.
That's probably a good idea, because I looked at a lot of these slides already, and I thought, wow, this is a lot to take in one evening.
Yep.
It really is. Okay.
And for most people in the district, they hone in on their school. They hone in on a particular aspect of it. You know, the reading coordinator or literacy coordinator for that part, the math coordinator for that part. I did want to mention one last thing, and I will kind of say this at the beginning. I focus on the top 2 categories that are in the performance bands, and sometimes the lowest category. So as you go through these slides, I would suggest that you train your eyes to look at those top 2 categories as you go through, because the video will move pretty quickly, especially if you haven't had a chance to preview the data. But that might be a helpful suggestion for you. And then we'll be able to answer questions at the end.
Thank you, Dr. Brown.
the audio. It's saying the output is headphones.
It's for next year. Students in grades K through 3. Sounded like that was it.
Mr. Lee, it's on mute at the bottom.
Yeah, we just muted it.
The speaker. On the white. Yeah. Like
There.
right there, yeah.
There it is.
It said the output was a headphone. See? Output device.
That is the headphone device.
Oh, okay.
I gotta hurry up, get to the media class.
There you go.
There it is.
Yeah.
The results that we will review today are students' oral reading performance from Amplified and NWDA math fluencies. In the middle of the year administration. We primarily utilize the data as another general snapshot of student progress throughout the year. Our oral reading measure. Good evening, Superintendent Placencia, President Ewing, members of the board, and Waukegan community. I am Dr. Jonathan Brown, Director of Assessment and Data. Tonight I will provide a review of our middle of the year achievement data for you. WPS students participate in interim assessments in math and reading up to 3 times per year. Our middle of the year assessments are optional with a few exceptions. Students in grades 2, 5, and 8 are required to test in math and reading, as those are results that are used to help place students in courses and programs for next year. Students in grades K through 3 are required to test in reading as we continue to measure student progress towards reading and on grade level by grade 3. The results that we will review today are our students' oral reading performance from Amplify and NWEA Math Fluency assessments, and our reading and math performance as measured by our NWEA Growth Adaptive assessments. While optional for some grades, the vast majority of students did participate in the middle of the year administration. We primarily utilize the data as another general snapshot of student progress throughout the year. Our oral reading measures give us more specific information that schools can utilize to inform instruction. Our NWEA growth assessments provide information that can inform instruction as well, but more so complement classroom-based data gathered by teachers. Throughout the presentation tonight, we will review the data in sections, followed by a summary of actions and next steps as we work to increase student achievement. This graphic depicts major initiatives of ASAP that are intended to improve student achievement: curriculum mapping, high school transformation, and middle school redesign. All major initiatives with multi-step plans that are being enacted with a focus on equitable practices. We like to start with a picture of student attendance through the year thus far, as we all know how important student attendance is for learning. As you can see, attendance figures at each level are higher this year than last and approaching pre-pandemic levels. Elementary levels are highest, followed by students in the middle grades and then students in the high school. Our district average through February 1st was 88%. Efforts to boost student achievement by increasing student attendance are underway through a collaboration between our MTSS and student outreach departments. Waukegan staff are continually working toward the goal of seeing all students read on level by grade 3. Here we revisit our benchmark reading measures to show student progress since the beginning of the year. The focus is on measured components of reading that influence success and provide information for the teacher to instruct. Those areas are phonological awareness, word recognition, fluency, and comprehension portions of the tests, starting with kindergarten and moving up through the grade levels. The performance levels are on your screen. It is important to remember that the benchmarks that are referred to for each point in time are always different. The benchmark for the middle of the year is higher than the benchmark for the beginning of the year, and the benchmark for the end of the year will be higher than the benchmark for the middle of the year. All students are always learning more and expected to learn more. Slides throughout the presentation will utilize performance bands. I will typically reference student performance in the top 2 categories and the lowest category. Students that score in the top 2 areas are very likely to be on track for meeting standards by the end of the school year, while those scoring in the lowest category are very likely to be in need of additional supports. Throughout the printed presentation, there will be additional reference slides that contain information such as the total count tested, as well as some corresponding percentages for each performance band. This slide is a sample of that. Phonological awareness is the first area of reading we will view. Recall that phonological awareness involves students' ability to recognize and manipulate sounds within words and connect them to letters. The phonological awareness portions of the test involve students blending and segmenting various sounds. Students are tested according to the language of instruction. In both languages, kindergarten students show an increase in applying phonological awareness skills. In English, 37% of students tested were at or above the benchmark for the middle of the year versus 29% at the beginning of the year. In Spanish, 68% of students tested were at or above the benchmark for the middle of the year versus 41% at the beginning of the year. Note, the pattern of improvement differs for each population. While more students scored in the at or above range in both languages, the number of students that scored in the well below range increased dramatically for English testers and decreased for Spanish testers. This is particularly why we display the full range of scores. It is important to know where students score on the continuum of skills. This can help with informing next steps for students as needs will differ. In the area of phonics word recognition, we again see an increase in the percentage of students scoring at or above the benchmark levels this winter. We see a 19 percentage point increase in English and a 27 percentage point increase in Spanish. Note that students are now scoring in the well below benchmark area. As mentioned previously, expectations for students increase as the school year progresses, and at this time, approximately 50% of kindergarten students are not on track to meet year-end goals in this area. Here we have first grade students' performance in the area of word reading fluency. This is a step prior to the oral reading of passages that is required later in the school year. First grade students' performance increased in both languages, with English rising from 23 to 30% at or above the benchmark, and in Spanish from 34 to 47% at or above the benchmark. There was a significant decrease in the percentage of students scoring in the lowest category in Spanish, while nearly half of the students in English are in need of additional supports. By second and third grade, students are asked to read orally and are asked questions about what they read. Of the students tested in English, there was a 10 percentage point increase in the number of students scoring at or above the benchmark in second grade, and a 2 percentage point increase in third grade. In both second and third grade, over 50% of students' scores indicate a need for additional supports in reading. In Spanish, significantly more second graders scored above the benchmark this winter, but fewer students overall scored at or above the benchmark in both grades 2 and 3. In Spanish, over half of second graders tested and 2/3 of second graders tested show a need of additional supports in reading. Oral reading performance highlights. In kindergarten, over 1/3 of students in English and 2/3 of students in Spanish tested at or above winter benchmark in phonological awareness. In the area of phonics and word recognition, the number of students scoring at or above the benchmark at least tripled in both English and Spanish. In first grade, the percentage of students scoring at or above the benchmark increased by 7 percentage points in English and 13 percentage points in Spanish. And lastly, the percentage of students scoring at or above the benchmark in the literal comprehension area increased in English in grade 2 to 41% and in grade 3 to 32%. Here we will provide a few instructional updates in the area of reading by grade 3. Those updates are divided into 3 areas: areas of growth, what's working well, and next steps. A couple of areas of growth. We want to focus on ensuring that core phonics instruction is implemented with fidelity. We are continually receiving professional development and on-site report to learn and implement instructional strategies based on the science of reading. Based on the middle of the year data, schools in collaboration with MTSS specialists have begun creating individualized student intervention plans to help students reach end-of-year benchmarks. Greater access to core instruction for diverse learners is another focus. Classroom visits indicate a need to ask questions that help students think at higher levels and a need to increase opportunities for student conversations about their learning. What is working well? The professional development that we're receiving on core phonics instruction. That includes Spanish and English. What is working well? Increased foundational skills, time, and lessons are being given. Increased use of decodable text to build phonics and fluency, and teachers are using the curriculum units and effective GLAD strategies. Next steps. In CKLA, our phonics instructional curriculum for English, all letter-sound correspondence concludes by February, and data will be analyzed for the next steps. We are going to continue PD on core phonics. That includes in Spanish and in English. We're going to finalize a school year 24 PD plan for K-12 science of reading shifts in practice. There's PD plan for Orden-Gillingham endorsed staff, letters training for cohorts of schools, individualized support by school based on school-based data and staff needs, and providing professional development to all school leaders in the science of reading. Our district level benchmark assessments are utilized to give us a sense of where student performance is at a moment in time prior to spring state assessments. These are additional data points used alongside curriculum and class-based assessments and assignments to help gauge how students are performing. NWEA differs from our state level assessments in that our state level assessments are made to focus on grade level standards only. NWEA is an adaptive test that allows students that are performing above grade level or below grade level to demonstrate what they understand and can do. That information can be used to inform instruction, but it also helps us predict performance on our state level assessments. The remaining MOY results will be presented by grade level, school, and race ethnicity. Those results will be relative to national norms. The final slides will show a projection of spring IAR performance based on winter results. Our EL department designates courses that should be taught in Spanish. These courses are then assessed in Spanish, the language of instruction. When students are in grade levels that participate in state testing, they may also experience the NWEA reading assessment in English because the IAR reading and College Board assessments are not offered in another language. Quickly, I would like to refresh your memory on what the score levels mean. Results are divided into 5 performance levels: high, high average, average, and low, with corresponding national percentile levels. Students that score in the 70th percentile or above are more likely to score in the meet standards area of our state assessments. Students that score in the average or above levels are very likely to be able to access grade level content with few additional supports needed. Students that score in the low average and low levels are more likely to need additional supports to access grade level content. Here's one more slide I'd like to review that will be familiar to most of you. It gives an example of how test expectations change over time. Students are expected to, and typically do, increase their achievement levels as measured by their test score as the year progresses. Students that do not increase their achievement levels fall behind. This means that, for example, a score of 197 corresponds to the 43rd percentile in the fall, but in the winter, the same score of 197 now corresponds to the 28th percentile. In the spring, that same score of 197 may correspond to the 20th percentile. In order for a student to keep pace with typical growth and/or standing according to national norms, the student that starts with a score of 193 at the 43rd percentile would need to achieve a score of 203 to maintain the 43rd percentile in the winter. In the spring, the student would need to achieve a score of 208 just to remain at the 43rd percentile nationally. With that said, we are always looking for students to do more than typical growth in order to change their relative standing and approach grade level expectations. In essence, we are looking for students to move up from the lower 3 performance levels and for those in the top 2 performance levels to maintain. As you can see, it can take a lot for a student to maintain their relative standing. I also want to mention that we use the percentile rank to discuss student scores on this test because every grade level has a different range of RIT or scale scores that are associated with the students in that grade level. Using percentiles and the performance bands gives us a common scale for a general discussion across grade levels. The following slides will display NWEA MAP reading performance in English for each grade level across the district. The percentage of students in the top 2 performance levels increased or remained the same in kindergarten and second grade between fall and winter. In kindergarten, we now have about 25% of students in the top 2 levels and only 26% in the lowest performance level. In first grade, fewer students scored in the top 2 levels, while there was an increase in the percentage of students in the lowest performance level. In second grade, we still have over 50% of students scoring in the lowest performance level in reading. Students in grades 4 and 5 showed an increase in the percentage of scores in the top 2 performance levels, with 23% in 4th grade and 20% in 5th grade. 17% of students in grade 3 scored in the top 2 performance levels. The percentage of students in the lowest performance level in grades 3 and 5 decreased this term. Over 40% of students in grades 3 through 5 show a need of additional supports in reading in English. In the middle grades, 7th and 8th grade students increased their percentages scoring in the top 2 performance levels, while also decreasing the percentage of students scoring in the lowest performance level. Across all middle grades, between 40 and 45% of students scored in the lowest performance level, indicating a likely need for additional supports. In reading in Spanish, we see a similar proportion of students in K through 2 scoring in the top 2 performance levels this winter when compared to fall. The percentages of students scoring in each category in kindergarten remained relatively the same, while there was a decrease in the lowest category of first grade and a doubling of the lowest category in second grade. In grades 3 through 5, we see students in grades 4 and 5 showed increases in the percentage of students scoring in the top 2 performance levels, nearly 25% now in each, and decreases in the scores falling in the lowest category. Third grade students' performance was similar to fall, but with more students scoring in the lowest performance level this winter. Across all 3 grades, close to 40% of students show a need for additional supports in reading in Spanish. In the middle grades, we see a slight decrease in the percentage of students scoring in the lowest performance level. That indicates a need for additional supports in reading in Spanish. In 7th grade, we see a slight decrease from 12 down to 10% of students scoring in the top 2 performance levels. But in grades 6 and 8, we see an increase in the percentage of students scoring in the top 2 performance levels, 21% in 6th grade and 17% in 8th grade. Here we have NWEA map reading performance in English and Spanish by school in alphabetical order. Of the first 3 schools displayed, Clark is leading the way with the largest percentages of students scoring in the top 2 performance levels and fewest overall in the lowest performance level. Clearview and Carmen Buckner students improved their performance on both ends of the scoring range, with fewer students in the lowest performance level and more students in the top 2 performance levels. Here we have Cook, Glen Flora, and Glenwood. Cook leads all schools in the district with over 40% of students in both languages scoring in the top 2 performance levels. Cook also has the fewest students scoring in the lowest performance level across all district schools with fewer than 15%. Both Glenwood and Glen Flora showed an increase over the fall term of students scoring in the top 2 performance levels in Spanish, with only Glenwood and Cook reducing the percentage of students scoring in the lowest performance level. Here we have Greenwood, Hyde Park, and Little Fort. Each school had held steady or increased the percentage of students scoring in the top 2 performance levels in reading in both languages, with the exception of English reading at Little Fort. Here we have Lyon, McCall, and North elementary schools. Both Lyon and McCall either remain the same or decrease the percentage of students scoring in the lowest performance level in reading in English. Over half of the students tested at North and Lyon show a need of additional supports in reading in English. McCall and North both increased the percentage of students scoring in the top 2 performance levels in English by 2 percentage points. Our first 3 middle schools are Abbott, Benny, and Juarez. Each school showed an increase in the percentage of students scoring in the top 2 performance levels in both languages, with the exception of Abbott in Spanish reading. Performance at the lowest performance level was similar between fall and winter. Juarez's differences could be due to fewer students testing at winter in Spanish. Our last 2 middle schools are Lewis and Smith, not to be confused with Lewis and Clark. Both schools showed an increase in the percentage of students scoring in the top 2 performance levels, with the exception of Lewis in reading in English. All middle schools have between 34 and 48% of students with scores that show a need for additional supports. Continuing with reading, here we see performance by race ethnicity. Of the student groups shown here, both Black and Hispanic students held steady or increased the percentage of students performing at the top 2 performance levels, with 15% for Black and up to 24% for Hispanic. Of these student groups in English, Asian American students lead the way with 38% scoring in the top 2 performance levels. Here we have the remaining 2 student groups with enough students for reporting. In both student groups, 2 or more races and white each saw an increase in the percentage of students scoring in the top 2 performance levels. White students saw a decrease in the percentage of students scoring in the lowest performance level, and both groups show 34% or fewer students are in need of additional supports. Lastly, we will take a look at spring projections based on student performance in the winter for reading. The projections shown are based solely on English reading tests. The projections that are provided are only for the English reading test completed. Typically, students need to score in the 70th percentile or above to have a high likelihood of meeting standards on the spring state test. Each grade level has a projection that is similar to or greater than the projection given in the fall. The top two performance levels on the right of the screen represent those projections. 3rd, 7th, and 8th grade have the highest proportions of students projected to score in the lowest performance area on the spring state test. Schools are targeting students in the yellow and green areas in an effort to help them meet standards by the end of the year. While 2nd grade does not participate in state testing in reading or math, NWEA gives us a preview projection for next year. Reading performance highlights. Across the district, 20% of students scored in the top two performance levels, while 43% scored in the lowest performance level at MOI. This is an increase of 1% for the top levels and 0% for the lowest level from fall. Clark, Cook, Greenwood, Little Fort, and McCall have 25% or more of their students scoring in the top two performance levels. The plus or minus that you see on the screen indicates the change from fall. Smith and Lewis have at least 20% of their students scoring in the top two performance levels at MOI. And 3 student groups, Asian, white, and 2 or more races, each have 25% or more of their student members scoring in the top two performance levels. Asian with 38% and white with 35%. Spanish highlights. Approximately 24% of students across the district in K through 8 scored in the top two performance levels at MOI. This is an increase of 3% for the top performance levels. There were about 36% of students scoring in the lowest performance level at MOI. Again, 1st and 2nd grade students performed the best with over a third of students scoring in the top two performance levels and fewer than a quarter of them in the lowest performance level. 8 elementary schools, Clark, Clearview, Cook, Glenwood, Little Fort, North, Washington, and Whittier each have at least 25% of their students scoring in the top two performance levels in reading in Spanish this winter. 2 middle schools, Benny and Juarez, have at least 20% of their students scoring in the top two performance levels. Here we have a few more instructional updates for ELA, SLA instruction for grades 3 through 8. A few areas of growth. We are going to ensure that there is a daily research-based reading instruction occurring at each school in whole group and in small group. We are continually building capacity of school leadership on research-based reading and writing instruction. We are providing professional development to all schools on the science of reading and writing. What is working well? Teachers are planning around common assessments and having collegial conversations in support of student achievement. Adjustments to instructional time and lessons are being based on areas of student need. Implementation of differentiated small group instruction is happening. What are some next steps? Throughout the month of February, Teaching and Learning is working with all schools to assess staff development needs. Next steps include differentiated support plans grounded in research and student data. The middle school redesign is working with the curriculum maps to increase the time allotted to the priority standards to improve academic growth and learning for all students. And the new middle school redesign schedule is being created to improve learning for students with an extra period for skill deficits to have dedicated time and strategies to address the needs of students. Now on to our math performance. Here we show our students' performance in math in both Spanish and English. Overall, across the district, approximately 18% of kindergarten through 8th grade students tested scored in the top two performance levels. 42% scored in the lowest performance level this winter. This is similar to our performance in the fall. Each grade level in K through 2 increased the percentage of students scoring in the lowest performance band in English. Kindergarten students overall have the highest percentages of students performing in the top 2 performance levels, as well as 36% or fewer students scoring in the lowest performance level. In grades 3 through 5, we have 20% or more students scoring in the top 2 performance levels in English and 16% in grade 4 Spanish. In the middle grades in English, 13 to 15% of students scored in the top 2 performance levels. Approximately 7 to 9% of students scored in the top 2 performance levels in Spanish. Over 60% of students that were tested in Spanish continue to score in the lowest performance levels. Dual language students in grade 7 are taught in Spanish. 6th and 8th grade students taking the test in Spanish are doing so at the request of the teacher based on student language needs at the time. An example would be students new to the country enrolling in grades 6 or 8. Here we see the first 3 elementary schools' performance in math. Clark leads the way with 29% of students in English and 27% of students in Spanish scoring in the top 2 performance levels. Next we have Cook, Glen Flora, and Glenwood. At the top of the screen we see Cook with 49% or more of their students scoring in the top 2 performance levels in either language. Both Glen Flora and Glenwood had the same or more students performing in the top 2 performance levels this winter when compared to fall. Here are Greenwood, Hyde Park, and Little Fort. All 3 schools had an increase in the percentage of students scoring in the top 2 performance levels in both languages. Little Fort with 34% in English, followed by Greenwood with 27%. Next are Lyon, McCall, and North. In the middle of the screen, we see McCall with 21% of students scoring in the top 2 performance levels in English. Both North and McCall increased student percentages in English, while Lyon increased student percentages in Spanish. Oakdale, Washington, and Whittier are next, with Washington and Whittier both increasing student percentages in the top 2 performance levels in both languages. Washington with 24% in Spanish and Whittier with 22% in English. Here are 3 middle schools, Abbott, Benny, and Juarez. Abbott and Juarez both show an increase in the percentage of students scoring in the top 2 performance levels in English, while Benny shows an increase in Spanish. Here we have Lewis and Smith. Smith shows an increase in performance in both languages, and Lewis shows an increase in Spanish. Here we have math performance by race ethnicity. American Indian and Hispanic students showed an increased percentage of students scoring in the top 2 performance levels, while Asian and Black students' performance remained similar to the fall. Here, student groups 2 or more races and white either performed similar to fall or increased in English performance. Lastly, we will take a look at spring projections based on student performance in the winter. The projections that are provided here are for both English and Spanish math tests taken. Again, typically students need to score in the 70th percentile or above to have a high likelihood of meeting standards on the spring state test. Overall in math, for students in grades 3 through 8, approximately 7% are projected to meet or exceed standards on the spring IAR. 4th grade is among the highest, with about 14% projected to meet standards on the spring IAR. Here are the remaining grade levels. Math performance highlights. Overall, across the district, as was in the fall, approximately 18% of kindergarten through 8th grade students tested scored in the top 2 performance levels. 42% scored in the lowest performance level at the beginning of the year. Each grade level in K through 2 increased the percentage of students scoring in the lowest performance band in English. Kindergarten students overall had the highest percentages of students performing in the top 2 performance levels, as well as 36% or fewer scoring in the lowest performance level. There are 5 schools, Clark, Cook, Greenwood, Little Fort, and McCall, that have 25% or more of their students scoring in the top 2 performance levels. Again, the plus or minus in the parentheses shows the difference between their fall scores and their winter scores. In grades 3 through 5, we show 20% or more of students scoring in the top 2 performance levels in English and 16% in grade 4 Spanish. In Spanish, the percentage of students scoring in the top 2 performance levels increased in grades kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 7th, and 8th grade. There were 3 schools across the district with at least 24% of their students scoring in the top 2 performance levels in Spanish. That's Clark, Cook, Glenwood, Little Fort, and Washington. Here we have instructional updates as it relates to math instruction. What are our areas of growth? We want to continue to support daily whole group and guided math practices at each school. We want to ensure that each school's ILT and MTSS teams are able to pull and read their math data in order to make instructional next steps. This includes developing user-friendly tools within Illuminate and Tableau to gather trends, gains, and gaps in math standards by class, grade level, and school so that database instruction can become more efficient. What is working well? 3 schools have participated in research lesson practices with the support of Dr. Takahashi, and 3 more schools will be trained in these practices next year. What are some next steps? Based on MOI data, the Teaching and Learning Department is making site-based visits to explicitly discuss student math data and provide schools with recommended action steps and support in preparation for the upcoming spring IAR. We are also supporting every school with the development of database school improvement goals to improve math outcomes. And lastly, the new middle school redesign schedule is being created to improve learning for students with an extra period for skill deficits to have dedicated time and strategies to address the needs of students. These are a few of the next steps that the Teaching and Learning Department and ASAP are planning to take.
I have 2 questions.
Thank you, Dr. Brown.
I can go?
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Riddle?
Go ahead, Ms. Gonzalez.
Yeah, my 2 questions. I'm glad that we're making some gains, but it is still a really heavy lift. I feel like for a student that makes it into the green, we have a student that makes it into the red, and I know that that's really hard to address. For me, I was really concerned at like what happens in middle school math, like between the English learners and the Spanish learners. It just seems like math gets really hard really quickly when they go from 5th grade to 6th, 7th, and 8th. And I don't know if, I don't remember, is that Dr. Takahashi program going to be implemented at the middle school level?
That I don't know an answer to.
That's very specific, but
Good evening. As far as for Dr. T, that is not the plan for the middle school level, but what we are right now looking at is within 5th grade, elementary school in general, but right now within 5th grade, by the time we hit April, if we're on pace, we're finishing our elementary with EM4. We're finishing that up. Our plan right now is working with 5th grade teachers to help support data collection around having a bridge between when 5th grade students are finishing their EM4 curriculum to their first unit of 6th grade when we're switching over to our Carnegie. That's one thing that we're looking at this year. We did it with a few teachers last year. As well as within every grade, we are folding in operations and algebraic thinking within each unit to build the capacity as they're moving into middle school. So it's bigger than just 6 through 8. That's a major part, but how do we build the foundation knowing that that is data that we see our students need more support with? So also with middle school, what we're working on is the exact piece of how do we provide mini lessons and math centers that are around orders and operation and algebraic thinking, and that those are just really critical pieces. So those are all areas that we're collecting data to bring to our curriculum council, right, for our staff to look at in order to make shifts using this data. So we've been looking at that for the last year. So those are beginning stages of systematic mathematical supports across all of our schools.
The second question I had was around, I think, first and second grade English language learners. I think in some of our schools, our Spanish learners they made significant gains in like not being in the lowest percentile in reading. But in our English language learners, that was like a struggle. Like we still have more students are in the red at those levels. Is that because, I don't know, is that because not like every student is in our pre-K program and they're like entering school with like limited experience with the letters and reading? Or I just like, how do we communicate that to parents, you know, that like, oh my gosh, their student is really struggling, and we, you know, so that we don't just focus on the students that are getting some of it and can make it to the top. You know, I don't want to forget about the students that are really struggling and just can't make that up really quickly.
So we're definitely needing more classes for pre-K and bilingual. That would be wonderful if we could add more. But another thing that has added to the success for some of our kids at those lower grades is the purchase of the phonics. So getting that Dajed from Benchmark has really helped. This is the first year of implementation for our bilingual teachers. So that's really helped. So we're starting to see some of those gains now.
So
we need to replicate that.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so you see the correlation between teaching students how to read and doing math.
I think that students need to be able to access anything, right? So being able to read problems and being able to understand algebraic equations, etc., they need to be able to read to do that.
Right.
Definitely.
And absolutely. And this is a Dr. Brown question, just briefly. You know, I've been studying numbers for a while.
Bring it on.
So, you know, I'm still very disappointed, okay, with the all of that red, okay, and and you only talked about the top performers and the low performers. The ones in the middle we didn't talk about. And I don't want people to forget, okay, that those ones in the middle, they are also not performing well. Okay, and they're getting there, but that means that there are still more of our students that are not getting it than those that are getting it in those in the blue.
Yes.
Okay, and so I'm going to continue. We have got to teach our children to read. Not teach them about reading. Teach them to read. And you'll see the correlation with all our work. That's where our money needs to be put, in teaching our children to read. I'm done.
Let me say a little bit about those middle categories. In doing a presentation like this, it's a little bit difficult to describe that middle category, because when we talk about growth from the first time point to the second time point, that change in that middle category could be because more kids left the lowest category to move into that middle category, or it could be because they left the top category to move into that middle category. So it's hard to describe that consistently for all the slides, and for people to digest it, it's a little bit easier to talk about. You can't move, you can't go lower than the red category, and you can't go higher than the blue category, but to look at those two changes. But yes, those kids are important also.
Absolutely, and I am also, as well as everybody knows, okay, I am a proponent of grade level attainment. And I understand growth is what is being looked at and all that stuff, but we need to make our children attain grade level growth. I think it's good, I guess, for statistics' sake, but for our kids, it's not good.
It's important. They can't attain without growth, so we try to give you a picture of both. There's attainment that's in there, but you're able to still see some growth in between the two. But we try to make it really apparent about the attainment. Yeah. Those blue and those green categories.
And one more last thing. I'm ready to go home. But an academic audit. Okay, I am very interested in doing that so that we will be able to actually see exactly where our children are at each grade level, hands down.
Where are they
performing? It's only going to be
performing?
able to be done with an academic audit.
And you're saying specifically where are they performing at each grade level?
Yeah, and you said, you told me that, okay, but this would be specifically because you didn't test all the kids. All the students weren't tested.
We aim to test all kids.
Yeah, I know.
To where you have a large enough body that you can make
assumptions.
right
and
about the entire grade level. Yes.
I get it.
Okay.
I get it.
Yes. Oh, somebody else up here? No?
I asked my question.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Ms. Vukovic. Oh, you need a microphone there. Yes, yeah.
So, looking at the scores, and I've been looking at them for the last few days, and I know I harp on this, and I have for the last 5 years, 6 years. When, and this is not for Dr. Brown because you're the data guy, and I'm talking to the ASAP people, so don't think that I understand that you presented the data. You're the speaker or the deliverer, but we don't want to shoot the deliverer. When are the reading specialists going to be brought back to the district to help with the red and the red and the red?
Right.
I don't understand. We've been 5 years. Well, 5, 6 years ago, they were cut completely. So we went 1 year. So these 8th graders that we're looking at their scores now, the 7th and 8th, they had no reading specialist at all in any of the schools. Then the next year, they brought one back per school, and they were charged with doing reading and math. And we know that, as Ms. Hannah was trying to explain, you have to know if you're, especially in the state tests and the IAR, they don't just give you 35 divided by 7.
Right.
It is, there were 35 cartons of, it's a
reading.
It's text, it's word problems, exactly. I don't understand. You talked about the ESSER money, and we have to hurry up and spend it now before a year and a half from now in the fall of '24. And Ms. Lensing asked, when was that money originally available? And it was originally available 2020. So why was something not done in the fall of 2020? And I know we were online, but there were people doing services, speech teachers doing services online. Why did we not hire reading specialists? And now we've been in school 2 years full time. Well, this year, and obviously isn't over yet. And we could have used that ESSER money. I know it was only good for 3 years. Then you hire the people 3 years ago and say, this is not, I came on as a reading specialist with, this is not promised for any other year, but this year depending on funding. So you could have hired those people, or brought back the ones that left, and they would have had 3 years. So the kids that are, let's say, were in 3rd grade 3 years ago, they were in 6th grade, they could have had at least 3 years. The kindergartners, they're now in 4th grade, 3rd grade. They could have had at least 3 years of support. I looked at the next steps just now. I don't see anything about hiring more staff that is certified. And I understand that, I know when the Hey Tutor program was brought about, and I put a Freedom of Information Act in to find out when we signed the contract, what their quote was, and how many tutors do we have now? And that was January 18th is when I sent the Freedom, I'll just say FOIA because I don't want to say the whole word now. And in August 26th is when their quote came in. And I believe Dr. Cesario brought it to the board in either September or October to be voted that we were going to spend this $1,672,000 for 60 tutors, 20 hours a week for 30 weeks, which is, I suppose he didn't think they were going to. First of all, I don't know why it took till September, October, when we've known they're behind for 2 years. Okay? So I looked at when they were hired, and none of the tutors for Hey Tutor began until January. Some were starting January 13th, and most of them were hired after I had put in my Freedom of Information Act. All of a sudden, there were a bunch populated here. 9 elementary schools have this Hey Tutor program. Now there's 15 elementary because everybody knows it needs to start at the beginning. It needs to start in kindergarten, and that's where the support needs to be. And yet, we have now lost 2 years. Last year, the online program that you bought, nobody liked it. Teachers didn't like it. They said they didn't get growth out of it. Now, I compared what schools had tutors, even though they didn't start till January, and compared it to their scores from what Dr. Brown just presented. And Lyon, North, Glen Flora, and Clearview all have 2 tutors. And from what I understand, some of the tutors take one child for 5 minutes, bring them back and take the next child for 5 minutes and go. That is not a reading intervention. Number 2, and this was said by the superintendent and whoever presented it, that they did not require a degree.
So if I may.
Please do.
Yeah, so Hey Tutor was brought in because we did have varsity tutors. We vet that, we talked about monitoring it, and explained that before, that it wasn't something that the principals or the teachers really liked. Our tutoring, that was one component of the tutoring plan that we laid out. The bulk of the tutoring was coming from our teachers. And then we also did have TutorMate. So what you were describing is called TutorMate, where the student is brought out for 5 minutes or a short period of time to do an assessment. It's not a tutoring program. So I just want to be very clear. That was an assessment that's related to a phonemic or a phonics-based program. We started with kindergarten, we scaled up to 1st grade, and then we'll be scaling up to second grade. So just to clarify that statement about why that happened.
Okay.
I'm glad you're on top of it though.
Right.
But that is a different program. It does have tutor in the name, but it's not part of the tutoring program. Again, it has to do with phonics.
But
okay?
Hey Tutor is the
But
program.
Hey Tutor is.
we have.
You're absolutely right. So it was presented, I believe I presented it in August or early September, and then there was an approval. I'm not gonna
Go ahead.
like this. I don't.
That's
it was
fine.
early
Yes.
on in the school year after we had done the assessment, but it does. By the time a quote is approved, then it has to go. There's, and I explained this. I think Mr.
did.
Vukovic was here too.
Yes.
That there's a period of time that it takes for them to to have a purchase order and for that to go through, and then they have to vet those folks. So we're not getting charged with that, but it was part of a process to assist with what we were doing. So we were looking at, and we're always looking at, how are we best serving the students, but we were not without any supports for them in this area. We looked at varsity tutors, and that is something that other districts across the country have used. It didn't work here, and we didn't want to continue and pay for another year. So some of those ESSA funds where we had budgeted, the initial budget was like $14 million for varsity tutors. We cut it down to, I believe, around 8 or 6 million, and the majority of that's what it costs. So I mean, I don't make I'm just saying. I'm with you. If we could get them in the classroom like this, I would. But we're competing with other districts who are also using Hey Tutor, and we had to go through the proper channels to ensure that that they had their background checks and everything else done. I think it goes without saying, we all have a sense of urgency here. We all are working towards those things. We've looked into hiring additional reading specialists. We've talked about this several times. Along with the hiring shortage for teachers, those folks fall into that category too. So we'll continue to look for these additional resources. We were at a conference last week where we were reaching out to different folks, and we met with Dr. Knowlton, myself, met with someone for an hour to talk about shortages that we could fill, and that was actually one of those things that came up. One of the positions, rather, not things, but positions.
But I've never seen I look at the employment page in 3 years. I've not seen even a posting for reading specialists. So how do you know you can't find them if they're not posted?
Okay, we have talked about bringing in, we have not posted them. No.
Dr. Cesario, can
Mhm.
you let Amanda answer this question?
Sure.
Because I think she can shed some light on how we're doing the work.
Good evening, Vice President Riddle, members of the board, superintendent, community, and colleagues. Just to clarify, the title that we currently have within schools is called instructional support teachers. Instructional support teachers do have to have a certification of an endorsement. They can have a reading endorsement, they may have a math endorsement, or they may have an ESL endorsement, depending on the student group in the building that the principal and the team is really trying to pinpoint instruction for. So each school did start off with one. Ms. Vukovic was part of that committee that worked with me a few years ago. Over the course of the past few years, through the annual use of data to look at site-based budget, to look at student needs, and look at new needs that pop up within their data, schools have requested and have been granted additional funding for additional ISTs, instructional support teachers, over the past couple of years. And through the site-based budgeting SBB process that's coming right now, there are a couple of schools who are requesting for those positions, given the red that you're noticing in the data that we see as well. And so it's not that we don't have certified or endorsed teachers to provide instructional support in small group settings. We don't necessarily call them reading specialists. Not all of them have a full reading certification. Sometimes they have the 18 hours, sometimes they have the whole 36, depends on what they've gone through. But I don't want to have a misnomer out there that there's no teachers providing small group or instructional support. We do have teachers at school levels providing instructional support for small groups for these specific needs.
I agree with you, and I'm not trying to pretend. I know that there are schools I've spoken to you know, a couple of teachers at different schools, they say we have people that come in and take the kids out for group. I'm not saying there aren't any. Why don't we have Waukegan hired people that are ours, that you can train, that you can help learn, you know, teach them what they need to know. Hopefully they'll have a reading endorsement, because it was a requirement when you were our supervisor. That's the part that is, because it's like, oh, let's get this online program. Well, let's get this. Why are we hiring? I mean, we're supposed to have 60 Hey Tutors. There are 23, at least as of my FOIA. There were only 23 hired. So there's no way there's 60. I mean, that's way short of 60 teachers. So there's 9 schools that don't have any of the Hey Tutor. I'm not saying they don't have other supports. But why can't we hire, whatever you call them, instructional support or reading teachers, that are hired people that we have, that are ours, that you can train, that you know what they need to know, and have PD for them, rather than keep taking chances at these little other companies that then you're
Sure, I
paying
think it's a
them and you're
combina-
paying the middleman.
Sure, I think it's a combination. I don't think there's not one right approach to help support the amount of need that we have. And so not ignoring all types of solutions that are out there. We have to be creative. We have to think through ways that we can provide supports for students, both with in-district staff, with looking at positions that we may be able to get approval for, staff, post, interview, recruit, all those different pieces, and find other resources as well. So I don't think it's a one or the other. I think it's a combination of try to use as many avenues as possible to meet the amount of need that we have. I don't think it's a one or the other. I think it's a combination.
Yeah.
You do.
Okay,
Go ahead, Ms. Hannah.
Miss Patty. Okay, we're talking about these tutors and reading and what the kids aren't getting and stuff like that, right? Why can't we? We know that we're short, right? The what we knew as reading specialists. We had those people in our district. Bring those people back so that we can come get our kids out of the red and move on from there. I mean, what is it going to hurt? And as I hear Ms. Vukovic talking about, right, that to train them or get them up to par to where you all want them now, okay, but see, you have a benefit in bringing them back because they already have the breadth of knowledge and you don't have to start at ground zero. And we will be able to move our children farther up the growth chart. And okay, and what? Okay, we can spend the money. We've had the money. Use the money for something that truly, truly is meaningful and going to be life-lasting for our children. Bring them back.
Can I interject? I think we're saying the same thing, but maybe not. So I think we termed it differently. We call it an instructional support teacher, which assists in reading and math. And every school uses it different. With my deep dives around meeting with individual schools, looking at our African American male achievement data, one that comes to mind is Lion, in which she does a little something different. I do believe she has an IST teacher. If I'm wrong, correct me. But she also does IST paras, in which the para is working more with the whole class in a sense once the teacher gets them on target, and the classroom teacher is able to focus on small group instruction, those kids that need it the most. So every school individually, based off the principal's plan, is using those IST differently. So in a sense, it's and correct me if I'm wrong, the way I understand it, a redefinition of the role and how they do the work. But there still is pull out, push in, more push in. Amanda, correct me if you want. And it does look different from school to school, Ms. Vukovic.
I wasn't going to name schools, but you're mentioning Lyon.
Yeah.
Their meets or exceeds went from 31% in the fall down to 22% in this winter.
See,
So however they're used, I mean, and I will be the last person to put any of this on the teachers. If they've got 50% of their students in their class that are below level, there is no way you can train that teacher and pull her out for 5,000 PDs a year. They're not going to be able to help every single one of those children. They need someone who is specialized in reading that can pull the kids out and do, and you know, maybe there's some parameters. You said, well, each school uses their instructional support person differently. Maybe that's the problem. How if they're using it that way, and you're saying you thought it was probably, it sounds like you liked that idea, but the scores went down, her scores went down almost 10 points.
Yeah, and that's MOY, right? Because sometimes we see scores dip at MOY and then they shoot back up by EOY. I'm just saying, so we don't know that as of yet, so I don't want to categorize. I know the hard work that they're doing there. We'll wait to see what
I'm not,
EOY
that's why I didn't want to bring up the name of the school.
We're both on the same page with that. I lost my train of thought.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I think the time is late here, and it's 9:45. You know, looking at the time, we've got the presentation of the data. There is nobody on this board or in the audience that is happy with what we see. You know, 25% of our kids are reading at grade level. You know, and that's not good. You know, but that's been the case for years, and I don't know what is going to change it. But we're working hard with a lot of different things. If there's a silver bullet, let's hear it. You know, the reading specialist didn't change it either. You know, that didn't change it. It was better than it was before. But we don't have. I don't think we have funds right now to go out and hire reading specialists, and we couldn't get them on board, and we would lose money. We wouldn't have the money once it's over with. From what I hear, you know, the government money will not be there to keep those reading specialists. So that was one of the reasons we were told that we weren't going to go out and hire a massive amount of teachers to help us with this reading, with this gap, because there wouldn't be money to continue with that. That's what I understood anyway.
Can I ask just one
go
clarifying
ahead,
question? Ms. Vukovic, so I think I'm understanding your point, and I may have lost it. So you're saying that if there was a teacher in there with a certified reading endorsement, that's what you're saying? Okay, now I understand you. I just wanted to make sure I was honing.
Right.
Yeah, okay,
You learn when you're reading everything, you learn how to diagnose, you learn diagnostics.
got it.
right,
Now I
right.
understand. Yeah.
Right.
And a person without, I'm not saying people without degrees.
I completely understand. I was going like this, so now
Right.
now I connect with you. I understand now.
we
So
just
I
need
get
to
it what
bring
you're
them all
saying.
back
We-
and
yeah.
let them help.
Okay, can we do that tonight? I guess my question is, Ms. Hannah, you
Think
are
I got
absolutely
it.
right. You've
I
said
got
that
it.
before,
Sorry.
again and again. We need to bring the reading specialists back. I don't know that we can do that. We have to agree, our administration has to agree, our board would have to agree that that's what we're gonna do.
Say what we want.
Well, okay. I don't think our president isn't here tonight. We can have this discussion again. What we've done tonight is to present a lot of data. We've seen this kind of data before. It isn't it makes us happy. Efforts are being made to turn this around. We're working hard in many areas to improve our reading scores. And we all know that is critical for our kids. But
We got a
yeah, I know.
person that wants to
I know.
talk.
Well. Go ahead,
Mr.
Ms.
Riddle,
Lindsay.
you made a comment that if there was a silver
Silver
bullet,
bullet.
you would like to hear it.
Yes.
There is. It's called intensive remediation. It's
Okay.
called addressing the problem at the source. It's called pulling these kids out, doing 4 hours of reading instruction. I've done it. I've seen kids in the red, and after 6 weeks, some need 8 or 12 weeks of instruction. Sometimes those that are at the very lowest need multiple rounds. We have made gains. We have done one-on-one instruction. You can do group instruction, small group instruction, not having to be the same age level, but the same competency level. Where are they? And you can target those individuals. You can provide them that remediated instruction that they desperately need so that they can get back into the classroom and fulfill the rest of their academic needs with science and social studies and well, continuing on the math, but the fine arts as well. The problem is that those that have access to this are individual community members in affluent communities.
Come on.
So there is a silver reading bullet.
I wonder if you could actually take that, Ms. Lansing, and discuss that with some of our administration so that we could get a program, if it's possible, like that in Waukegan.
Yeah, let's go. I've been wanting this for years.
Right.
But we're taking out reading specialists, so the message is that the classroom teachers can climb this uphill battle alone.
And we don't want our classroom teachers to do
No,
that
but it's
alone.
been
We know it
5
can't be
years.
done.
So is this a guarantee? Can we get a
Right.
guarantee from the board tonight that, just like Mr. McIntyre said, we have students that are in a crisis level? Are we finally at that crisis level where we can commit to doing something after 5 years?
Well,
That's all we're looking for. That's all we're looking for.
I'm
We're not
asking-
asking you guys to
Right.
do the heavy lifting all of yourself, but we want a commitment that this will be a targeted focus, and we're going to start seeing the gains that these kids deserve.
Okay, and if you have information on that particular program and it's working in other districts, please share that with our administration, share it with the board, because I think it's something that we can certainly look at. We're open to a lot of ideas up here. If we can improve these scores so that, more than 20 and 25% of our kids are reading at grade level. That's what we all want. We all want the same thing. We want to see our kids succeed. But again, it's late tonight. We've had the reports again. I don't think we can solve these issues tonight, but we can certainly begin to work on them.
I motion we adjourn.
Yeah.
I second.
Second? Okay, we've got a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, meeting adjourned.